Staff Senate. Then we have over here Eric Wallach, who is a reporter for the Times Argus News, Katia Guillaume, who is a reporter for Channel 3, and Cindy Ashlock, Executive Assistant to the President.
Well, Mr. Hessing is planning to connect at various times this afternoon by phone. He's going to text Deb when he's on the line, so we'll all know when he goes to chime in. At your seat, you have a new MSU Texas travel mug from Mr. Vidmar in his office. They're really awesome. As a reminder, this meeting is streamed live on the internet, so please silence your devices, unlike me. Also, for those of you seated around the room, the chairs at the end of the table are for those who will be making presentations or answer questions during the meeting. So if that is going to be you, please make sure to sit or stand there and be certain to speak up so that you can be heard online. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning the agenda items at the beginning of each meeting. No one has signed up, so we will move on with our agenda. Our next item is 18-01 University Dashboard. Beginning in 2012, the administration developed a dashboard which contained measures that were deemed important to the university. Since that time, the dashboard has been updated and presented to the board each November. Mr. Mark McClendon, Director of Institutional Research and Assessment, will comment on the dashboard. Mr. McClendon.
Thank you. Basically, we just have the dashboard here to, as kind of a snapshot of where the university is at on things that we think would probably be important to you. We divided it into basically five categories. Student access being at the top. Residential university experience, that's trying to get a feel of, like, part of our COPLAC mission, you know, how students are impacted. Student success, which is always important. Operational effectiveness, which is kind of a, you know, a little bit of how we're doing. And then competitive resources. Did you want me to go through this line by line or kind of just section by section?
You can give us kind of section by section.
Okay.
We'll have questions.
At the very top, we have the enrollment. Enrollment, the undergraduate, first time, full time, all of these areas, and you can see we're rebounding from where we were in 2015, but still on a slowly inclining a little bit. A few of the things that impact these numbers are, if you look down towards the student success, we produce a whole lot of degrees. So that impacts our enrollment by getting people out of here, which is a good thing. The other thing is, when I ran the numbers, with our first time, full time, I think this is something that I'm sure you're going to get, in other aspects of this meeting. 40% of our first time, full time students now come from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I actually went back and looked at Texas Education Association, which we're in Education Service Center 9. And I looked through about 15 years of their enrollment for the Service Center. And this is one of the areas that has just continued to decline. All the other ones have gone up by about 20%. We were, I think, they look at it by 10-year period, and we were down 5% still. So hopefully that will flatten out. But growth for that group is going to, it has to come from someplace outside of the 12 counties that surround, Wichita Falls. A few of the other things that I found was the number of Hispanic students. That is going to increase as we get more students from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that's probably a good thing. And also up here, the number of receiving Pell Grants has climbed from 37 to about 40%. And I think that's probably related to getting students, Hispanic students from the Dallas area. Scrolling down to the residential university experience, this is just, number of students we have on campus. We built the new dorms. So we're at, I want to say, I'm sure Dr. Lamb can clarify this. I think that's close to 90% capacity. So that number is going to be flat until 4 dorms can be added. And the other items are, Eureka participation, which is slowly, increased over the years, and then the numbers study abroad. The student success rate, this is retention, graduation rates, degrees awarded. Our retention peaked around 2015, about 73%, and it's slowly coming back down. So that is probably an area of concern that you will talk about with some other group later on. However, our 6-year graduation rate actually has climbed up to 45%, which a decade ago it was fairly low, and that's a pretty acceptable number. The number of graduates, we're at 1,083 undergraduates, and we actually have more seniors, more people classified as seniors this fall than we did last fall. We have about a little over 1,800 who have over 90 hours. Not all of them will get out, but that number is going to remain high. So that will impact, enrollment numbers going forward. The operational effectiveness, I basically took, and these are just straight numbers, state appropriations per FTE and total expenditures per FTE, and just to see how much it costs to run the university versus how much the state is giving us. And that number is going to impact, the average student debt. They're going to slowly diverge, and then the debt is probably going to climb in relation to that. And now the competitive resources, these are just, our endowments, our fundraising. I'm sure you'll get a full report when you talk about that. So that's pretty much it. Were there any questions?
Is our ratio between first-time students, freshmen, and seniors, has it always been lower in the freshmen than it has been in the graduating seniors?
As far as,
in other words, we've got 1,208, whatever the number was, in our senior class, but we only had 814 in our freshman class.
Yes, and that is...
Is that pretty normal for years?
Yes, it is, because, our entering classes have been like anywhere from, a few years ago it was in the 600s. It's climbed back up to the 800, students. And we're putting out 1,000 degrees. So it's the transfer students are really, a big part of the university. I want to say, looking at this, it's about 1,100 people classified as freshmen, and that's first-time freshmen, people who transferred with less than 30, or that didn't quite get to 30 their first year. It's about 1,100. The sophomore class is a little bit lower, and then there's about 1,200, and then about 1,800 seniors. So it's been like that for the 6 years I've been here. We've been a little bit top-heavy in the upper classes, and that's mainly due to transfers and feeding the enrollment.
Item 1.5, did you mention why the data is missing for 16-17?
1.5. That we've had a discussion on, we've changed how we looked at entering freshmen, because I calculated this number based off of strictly just a strict numbers, which didn't always compare with how admissions calculated it, because they would say they would super score their scores, and we had a whole series of meetings over the last year about redefining how we identify and track. So that one's probably going to go away and come back in another form for next fall.
Well, what it seems to say is 45% of the students we admit do not meet our admission standards. Is that what it says?
That is what it's saying, yes.
And did we not want to report 16-17? Is that why we're changing it, or?
Well,
is it increasing? Is that the reason?
It's hard to calculate because we redefined how. I can certainly look into the number and recalculate it. But I wouldn't say it's increasing necessarily. But it is, but yeah, you're right. That overall, the number of the students that we admit in the first time full-time, only, roughly half don't meet the posted admission standards.
That we raised several years ago, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Remind me, where did the numbers on the target for 1920, where did those numbers come from?
That was just from a meeting with was it the cabinet? Yeah, the cabinet,
Okay.
where they're just kind of saying, this is about where we think they should go. Best guess.
Is that where we build our budget from?
No, that would be a better question.
I don't
Is
know.
that where we build our budget from in terms of hours, et cetera?
No.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of great data. How do you use this dashboard?
How do we use it? Now, that would be an interesting question. We usually don't look at it specifically in the dashboard. Usually, people will ask, for data more in-depth data
Okay.
when they're looking at it. This is just supposed to be a snapshot of kind of where we're at.
I appreciate the tool just personally because it's an easy way to refer back to some things. So maybe it does allow us to also see that there might be some areas that we need to pay attention to. But one that doesn't look at it on a daily basis, the dashboard certainly is beneficial to me. So thank you for
Glad to hear that.
pulling that.
It's a basic way to identify trends. So it's very, very basic information behind every one of these categories. There are a lot of reports we could pull to help us see how we got to that number for the year. But we really want to be able to look forward and backward and see what's trending. And we want to know, is that the direction we want to be going? And if it isn't, what are we going to do about turning that direction around? So it helps us project, but it also helps us adjust behavior. And what Mark's talking about with 1.5, as I got here and we discovered those numbers of meeting unconditional standards to enroll, we thought we had to stop everything and have a full discussion with everyone so that everyone on campus knew what our standards were, but also what Mark's talking about, there's an equation where if your test scores are very high, but your class rank is low, there are equations where you adjust for test scores and class rank and other issues that are our published standards, but a combination of those standards that are exceeded can change the decision. But it's complex, and it looked a little bit like smoke and mirrors to people because we hadn't described it. So we've now described it, and you're going to hear a report today about what the university committee suggests we do to make this more transparent and accessible to everyone. So I assume Mark stopped tracking it while he was on the committee, so he decided to stop tracking it, and I didn't pick up on the fact that he didn't track it, but we can certainly get those numbers to you. We're not trying to hide anything, we're just trying to move in a new direction.
Well, thank you, Mr. McClendon. Are there any other questions or comments? This item is presented as a point of information only and no action is necessary. Our next item will be discussed in executive session later this afternoon. The committee of the whole stands in recess until that time. We'll now move on to regular committee business. The executive committee will come to order. Members of the committee joining me today are Mr. Crosno, Ms. Marks, Ms. Burks. The first item is 18-03, approval of the minutes of the executive committee meeting August 3rd. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved as presented. Item 18-04, campus construction update. The board book includes project status reports and a report on smaller construction projects. Additionally, Mr. Owen has photographs of current projects to share with us. Mr. Owen?
Thank you. We'll do our normal quarterly update on the projects. Start by coming back about 6 months, just kind of refreshing where we are with our near-term plans. Since we looked at this last May, we put a parking lot in on Hempstead, and we took down McGahey. And our current plans are to start the health science building, followed by adding a lifelong learning center at 2527 Hempstead, relocate facilities on Hempstead, and so that we can renovate the Daniel building for student services. Once the health science building is up and operational, we'll be able to move the occupants of it into the new building, and the College of Education will move from Ferguson into Bridwell. far as the programming with Ferguson, we're still working through that. And as at some point, we're looking for more parking, when funds are available, we'll take down counseling center to construct a parking lot there. I should have added that the IT will be relocated too once Bridwell Hall is renovated. And just a follow-up to that, regarding the hardscape and the Jesse Rogers Promenade paving areas of campus. We've had this for a while, but we wanted to kind of review a little bit of it, primarily to update you on what's going on in this area. But eventually, we want to add pedestrian traffic from north end of Hardin down to the south end of Bowling on Council, and from Council all the way to about Color Trig on Comanche. And again, this is a zoomed in version of that. We currently have an architect doing landscape for the quad in between Bridwell, McCoy, Dillard, and Health Science Building. We're going to add the landscaping to the Health Science Building to their scope of work and one of the agenda items. Just made sense to have the same guy doing both designs, and also help roll one construction contract into, or instead of have two construction contracts, have one, so we can save some money that way too. We also are going to do some design work on adding the paving system down in between McCoy and Martin. We'll do what we can afford through this area, and potentially maybe the parking lot. Just depends on how funding holds up through that process. And this is a satellite rendering of what it will look like once that's all constructed, with the Health Science Building, the Jesse Rogers Promenade right there, and the Health Science Quad in that area. And I'll zoom in a little bit more. This is an artist rendering of what that quad will look like. We're still in the early phases of design, but in essence, there's a shallow water feature in the middle of it that will have 4 horses going through it. And we're trying to, we want to save as many of the existing trees as possible. Really, our biggest issue is getting rid of the rainwater through there, because there is no below the surface storm sewer system. So the water that comes off of McCoy's got to go out this direction through swales in this area. So there will be a little bit of terrain changes through there. This is basically a park-like atmosphere that we're looking for. As far as actual construction at this point, the Jan Packer Fancy Lights warehouse expansion is underway. Currently, these 2 buildings exist. You're looking right there at the north edge of it. It occupies about 7,500 square feet. We're adding 4,000 square feet on the new addition that will come out this direction on the building. And if it hadn't rained yesterday, they would have poured the slab today. They're going to do it tomorrow. So we're making good progress. I expect this to be completed by the time we're ready to put displays back into it in January, early January. We're also looking at some renovations of the Sunwatcher Clubhouse. I realize this drawing is pretty detailed, but just wanted to show that there's a lobby area that we're converting to a couple of offices. This is that lobby area. And beyond that, other than a gym area that's been replaced by Red Wine years ago, that we're going to convert to a conference room. The rest of the changes are somewhat minor in nature, other than repairing doors or replacing doors that are really outdated. And this work is currently bidding. We will start construction in December, hope to complete it in the February timeframe so Housing Administration can move over at that time. Hardware is generally a long lead time item, so that will probably define when it's finally completed, but we're hoping it's done by February so that we can then move, once they're into this area of housing is, that the area they vacate in Beewood will create a language lab by the summer of next summer. And this past year, we spent about $50,000 adding lights around campus just to increase safety on campus. We added these two light post bowling fountain in September, as I recall, we finished it. And we're going to spend another $50K this year doing the same thing. In fact, next week we'll meet with some students to decide their opinions on where they would like to see more lighting. And that project will probably take as much as 9 months, depending on where the lights go. And lastly, we installed the kiln over at Painting Fine Arts and should have that operational next several weeks. Any questions?
Well, if no one has any questions, this item is presented for information only and no action is necessary. Item 1805, MSU Deferred Maintenance Reports, Campus Condition Index. The reports included in the board book are required by statute and show deferred maintenance projects completed in FY17, as well as those planned for the next 5 years. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Owen regarding these reports? This item is also presented for information only and no action is necessary. Item 1806, the Moffett Library Renovation Project, architect contract and CMAR approval. The administration has recommended 2 action items relating to this project. Mr. Owen, please explain.
Sure. At the last board meeting in August, you approved our recommendation of selecting HMB as the architect of record to do the renovation designs. And at the time, until we selected them, we couldn't do the contract negotiations, and so we've since done that and resolved that to be less than $650K, and we need your authorization to be able to move forward with that contract. The second item is we sent out a request for proposal for a construction manager risk, basically a general contractor to do construction over Moffett when the designs are complete. And we had 6 submissions, 7 of people on the committee selected M&F Litigant as the preferred contractor, largely because of our experience with them in the past and the reputation of their superintendent that they were assigning to this project.
Before we discuss further, could I have a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 18-07, Information Technologies Relocation Project Authorization Request. The guaranteed maximum price approval. Mr. Owen, please review this item and recommendations.
Sure. Several years ago when we had the TRB, we split up the TRB funds and decided on different projects. The IT relocation was one of them. It was the smallest one and has been somewhat on the back burner because it was part of the health science building, or health science building needed to be constructed before it could be completed. It involves, the health science building will have a data center installed in it, and we will move the one from Memorial basement to the new health science center. And the building project covers the cost of the 4 walls and the ceiling and the floor, but not all the equipment and the extra air conditioning units, backup generators, and so forth that are needed for the data center, and these dollars are assigned to that.
Before we have discussion, could I have a motion to approve this recommendation as presented?
So approved, or so made.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 18-08, the Gunn College of Health Sciences and Human Services Building Project, construction contract approval, and increase the total budget. Mr. Owen, please explain this item and the recommendation.
Sure. At the last board meeting, we requested authorization, or you granted us authorization to enter into a contract for the site package if its value plus the cost of, or the estimate for the building package totaled to less than $29.25 million. And as it turns out, it did come in as such, so we moved forward with that contract. About that same time, we were also bidding out the building package itself. And those bids came in on October 12th. About a week, 10 days later, I received a call from the construction manager at Risk that told me that the bids were significantly higher than our budget. And within a few days, he gave me written documentation showing that we were $7.5 million over budget. And so he immediately went into a mode of coming up with ideas to try and save some money. And, excuse me, and I'd like to review a few of those briefly on the overheads with you, just to kind of, so you understand where we're coming from with it. We really concentrated on wanting to preserve the interior of the building for the students and looked at modifying the exterior of the building to be able to save the dollars. Now, these are old renderings. They're not going to be exactly right, but we don't have any new ones since this time last year. One of the things that we'll end up having to eliminate is this large eastern face. We will still end up having glass in this area, but it will be the MSU brick across here without the white front wall. As long as we're on the glass wall there. The interior had some challenges too. The atrium, 4-story atrium, it's expensive to construct the 3rd and 4th levels because you have to scaffold up to it. You can't use normal lifts. There's a high-dollar smoke evacuation system that has to be available or installed because of it. The structure on the roof is modified. You have to do some additional fire protection to the all the steel that's in that general area because of, it's potentially it's considered primary structure. So to get around that and to save roughly about $500,000, if we limit that atrium to 2 stories instead of 4, then we'll save a significant amount of money. So what we're looking at doing is putting a floor in right there between the 2nd and 3rd floor, and also between the 3rd and 4th floor. It will give us about 4,800, 5,000 square feet of space that we could potentially expand to at a later date if need be, but it would be primarily just collaboration and lounge space for now. On the roof, the penthouse up there, we will take it down and the air conditioning systems will move closer to the center of the building. But realistically, if you're standing out here, you're not going to see it up there anyway. You have to be over probably harder than trees are getting your way. It's really not a big issue. And then on the west entrance, this terracotta tile will be replaced with either the MSU brick or EFS as it's called, or stucco basically. It's the same finish that's on the east side of Legacy. Prefer to go with the MSU brick because the EFS doesn't have the same life as the brick does. I'd rather not leave that problem to somebody 25, 30 years from now. And we'll also are looking at removing this glass atrium entrance on the west side and possibly this colonnade on this corner. Currently, the architect is reviewing the feasibility of the list of about 75 or 80 items that the general contractor has recommended, and middle of next week they're supposed to provide their input to the contractor, who will in turn refine his numbers a little bit more. And we will meet as a group the Tuesday after Thanksgiving to review it. And we are, at that point, we expect them to have at least $4.5 to $5 million worth of savings identified. And if they do, we'll ask them to potentially go ahead and move forward with more detailed drawings on the design so that the contractor can define his numbers and we can get in the contract. If they still aren't at that level, then unfortunately really our only option is to go into a redesign and rebid it, and we're probably looking at 6 months additional time. I should add that the estimates, we did have 3 estimates in this at the end of August. one from the general contractor, one from the architect, and one from an independent. They all showed that we were going to be within budget, but it didn't work out that well. When I asked the contractor what happened, he didn't really give me a great answer, other than say that market conditions apparently were such they had undervalued the labor market, and he considered pretty strong economy, a low unemployment rate, several $1 billion worth of TRVs statewide, and a hurricane or three. It's didn't help matters for us. And I will add too, I know Dr. Johnston and Dr. Filet have had discussion with other institutions across the state, and they have similar experiences with their estimates being high. And I should back up and say that the $3 million extra that we need, when we started this project, it was slated, it was approved for $40 million, but all our contracts were written based on $38 million, so we were withholding $2 million just for such an occasion. So we do have those funds. The other $1 million, we know of over $500,000 in savings from the fire marshal project, and the balance will be removed from the Moffett, Bridwell, and IT relocations, so that we can fund it with the TRV dollars.
Okay, before, we have a motion to approve this recommendation as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have, yeah.
I want to ask Kyle, I thought we had a buying contract in place. I'm not understanding why we're the ones on the hook for a increase in cost, why the contractor doesn't have to share in that.
Well, he's not under contract to build it yet. That's what we bid it out. The process involves they give estimates, basically their best guess, and then we bid it out. And then once it's bid out, they give us, it's called a guaranteed maximum price to build it to, and then they're on the hook, so to speak.
But we haven't gotten the guaranteed max price yet.
That value is $7.5 million over budget, and so we're clearly not signing that. So if they bring it down $4.5 million, we sign $5 million, we sign it for under $33 million, then they'll be committed to it. Yes.
It appears that there's a combination there. Was it over budget before all the hurricanes?
No, and it's the estimates, like I said, that we received in September all looked like we were in line, because the way the process really is supposed to work is you do these estimates throughout the design process, and if they come in high, then the architect has to make adjustments. Well, the estimates kept coming in that we were okay.
So with all of these changes, we'll still be able to maintain the dignity of the campus, but it doesn't appear to be as contemporary. Is that what we're eliminating?
That's probably a good.
So did you come up with all the recommendations, or a committee in addition to the contractor?
The contractor had came up with a lot of them, but then he's reviewed them with us. He's done it with me a couple times, and the architect, we met with him also, and then as a group, we will go through what we accept and what we reject.
So Kyle, this is your business. What is your gut feeling in regards to this?
As far as do I think we'll get there, I'll say the glass is half full, and say that I think we'll get there. I spoke with the contractor actually before lunch, and he seems to think there are some more drastic things he could do to save some money, but it sounds like he's still looking in the $4.5–5 million range. So I think we're a go, but we're going to lose a couple more months. I think it's probably going to be late January before we really have a guaranteed maximum price contract. Now, if they, at some point in that, we may feel like the footprint of the building is going to be okay, and we may signal or tell them to proceed with the construction of the site. But worst case would be we'll wait till that second GMP is complete. Yes, sir.
Where are we legally? Because you said we went out and got 3 bids. We come in and we take the better bid. Now the better bid increases the cost by $7 or $8 million, and now we're negotiating. How does that legally fit when they now have come back at 20% more than they bid, and yet we picked them as the low bid?
Now, we, independent of the bidding process, we have, the architect creates an estimate, the construction manager, and we went to a third party. None of those companies are not bidding on it at all. We just have one bid process where they all were submitted and to our purchasing department, and then we give them to the construction manager, and he sorts through them and says, okay, they're worth $7.5 million more than what the bids.
Right, but we selected a bidder, right, based on an original number that we were given? Is that not correct?
No, we selected a construction manager based on a proposal they gave that was assumed a $29.25 million construction.
Do we need to go out and rebid this now that you've got considerable modifications? I mean, it's going to look very different than what we're seeing. Is this something we really need to look at and rebid? Because we're talking about 20 and 25% variations. What's our legal status here?
We don't have to rebid it. From that standpoint, we could. You run the risk of rebidding it that some of the players that bid the first time won't participate. I guess you could say the other way around too, you might get some more. But generally rebidding doesn't always work in your favor because people, the cards are on the table, they show them.
Well, I'm concerned someone bids to get a contract, ups it by 20%. We start negotiating and they wind up with a contract that isn't what we thought we were going to get in the first place. And I just wondered if we're being circumspect.
Well, the bidders, there were 70 bids that we received approximately. The building is broken down into different divisions, as it's called, roughly 30.
Right.
And so an electrical contractor will bid on strictly just the electrical. He doesn't know who else is bidding against him. He submits the bid to us. So it's a blind bid. It's not like a competitive sealed bid where there are only 3.
But it's not a blind increase.
No.
I mean,
But he didn't know that he was, he thought he was giving a fair price.
I don't think there's anything driving us to do this in a hurry. And I'm concerned that from a legal, ethical perspective, we ought to design what we want, bid it, and then accept the person who bids and can do it for what we have designed and looked at. I don't like this jockeying around.
I would agree with Linwood in relation to the changes that we're proposing. I mean, a big part of what was presented to the board in relation to this project was the aesthetic appeal to the campus and what we were looking to do to move forward. And some of those changes are dramatic. I mean, it really, and not only that, but I think as a board, we would definitely want to see, those changes in effect on something, on some level, to be able to say, are we even wanting to do that? Because just kind of taking a piece of it and trying to imagine and saying, well, hey, take this wall out, cut that out, and it'll still look great. Well, will it? And that's a substantial investment. So I agree with Linwood. I think that that's something beyond the point that when you make a bid, you should be held to what you say approximately you're going to be able to do it for. And I get that, but I don't know. There's just a lot of ifs there.
Well, the bids that they submitted, again, to the electrical guy, we de-scoped part of it to be able to lower the price. So they're not changing their bid necessarily. It's because we pulled something out of it, and so they're giving it the value back for it.
But Kyle, aren't you asking the board to approve something we can't even see an artist drawing of? And we're talking about $6-7 million?
Well, one of the comments I would make is that, first of all, the impact of what you're talking about, even though we talked about it and some of it, to me, it's much more real when you start looking at what you're cutting out and everything. And when we originally considered this project, one of the things that we were told was that this design made us more competitive for these type facilities with other universities, because other universities had built things that looked like this. I suspect that if we'd been presented with the cutback version of what you're talking about now, originally, maybe we would have approved it then and gone on with it, but we didn't. And seeing what we're talking about now, I'd kind of like to see what it's going to look like before I approve it again, if we do, because to me, it's your presentation today brought home to me how much different we're talking about than what we originally approved.
Well, to Kevin's point, this is the cornerstone, really a big part of kind of the reinvention of the campuses that would be presented. And so you see the artist rendering of this fantastic fountain and this amazing appeal, and then a less than corner mark, especially because we don't know. It may be great. We may see it and be like, wow. It's tough to imagine. So,
I'm not-
May I say that one of our guiding principles and I don't have an opinion about whether we move forward or not, because it's very disappointing. And I think in part, what Regent Givens is asking is what all of us ask ourselves: why does an architect design a building that can't come in and bid? And to me, a lot of the fault of this, fairly or otherwise, rests with the beautiful design that we found so attractive, and now we are really trying to protect square footage because that's what's going to impact student learning, and we're left without the design that sold us on the choice of that architect. And so we're in between we're in a hard spot. So I welcome the wisdom of the board on this.
As a student, I just ask that as much as we can, as logistically as we can, that we keep at least that front of the building. I know that's probably the most expensive part that we're trying to take out, but we do look at other schools, and that is what it looks like, and that's what students want. So if we can keep that, the integrity of how it looks right now, because people have seen these, and that's what they're expecting.
so what are our options, Kyle? Can we go back and have more information to present to the board? We get something, at least an idea, if whatever it is this contractor is going to recommend, so that we at least have some form of a rendering or at least a schematic, we can kind of look at it and say this is more along the lines of what we're thinking it will look like.
Sure, we could certainly get the architect to create some type of rendering to show more what the final product would look like. I presume though that would be February before you'd see it out. It wouldn't take them that long to do it.
But we don't have to save it for a board meeting. We can do a vote outside of board meeting. And in a way, I hate to intervene in this, but what I'm hearing them say is that, okay, you've asked him for square footage. We'd like to ask him for the look. So we might need two choices, because the architect would like to preserve the look, but I don't know that he wants to let go of anything else either. So the question is, how much square footage do we lose, or what else do we lose if we have the look and the impact, because we went for the square footage? Is that correct, James? Because your folks dealt with this much more than I did.
Yes, that's correct.
So we might need two options: the option where we keep the look and it's a smaller building, and the option where we keep the square footage and it looks different. And he'd probably be very happy to oblige us on that. And if we can get it sooner, would the board be willing to meet by phone or get things by email and decide that way? Because
I don't know if I would. I mean, this is a lot of money. I mean, it's a big expense. We came up with 33 million was what we started at, and now we're talking about 41 million. And this is with all the big cutbacks. I think it's too big a project to, I think we need to put the time in on it. So this is going to be here a long time. And it's going to serve a lot of students. You're talking about a lot of growth. I'd like to see how the growth that you're planning fits in with this. And I do not feel comfortable with just a phone meeting to discuss some changes when they're so large and so encompassing.
Can we have a special meeting in relation to this project? Would everybody be willing to participate in something like that? I mean, the significance of this project is huge to them. And I think, it gives you an opportunity, Jones, to kind of prepare options, because I don't know that two's enough, honestly. I think you could look at it and say, there's variations of that. We may be able to lose some square footage and some appearance, but overall have a better project than just two options of we keep it the look or we keep the footage.
Sure. And just to clarify, the project is going from 40 to 41 million. The construction costs, or basically the construction limit, is going from 30 to 33 million, but the increase in overall budget was just from 40 to 41 million.
Well, but it's fair to say that we've decided now to spend all that because we were holding it and we could have saved it.
You did have, it says guaranteed maximum price of 33 million that the board approved, 40 in case it went over. I'm just asking, I thought it says here, and now we're at 41 with all these modifications.
So, I'm sorry, 30 is what was originally approved, and we're asking for it to be raised to 33 million for the cost of construction. There are other soft costs involved with the construction project between the 7 and 41, or 33 to 41 million, that for furniture and things, so that the actual project total budget is going from 40 to 41 million.
So, then I think it does beg, Mr. Chairman, for more information, that's all.
I would agree.
Yeah, because I misunderstood some things, but now I don't understand exactly what it is we've done.
I think and if we can have that, because I do want everybody to be very clear on this. It's a big project, it's a big investment in the future of the university, and this is high profile because this is a huge area of growth for us. And I think it's going to continue to be that, not only for us, but for the state. So I'd rather do it right. The other piece of it is the IT. I really want to understand, because originally that was a huge relay. Being able to kind of move IT and health sciences really kind of answered a lot of questions in the audit process, things we were non-compliant with originally, security. And so to think that we're going to cut, change, alter, minimize sounds concerning.
The IT portion of it wasn't.
That's not going to change at all?
No, it won't change. There appears to be some savings from that project based on some preliminary pricing, so that we could use that to help fund the $1 million extra.
I think if we can just get that whole answer more cohesive for the board, I think it'd be helpful.
Well, I completely agree. We need to wait and get right. But how long can we wait before it goes up again?
That's a good question. The longer we wait, probably the higher it will go up. So the intention would be to go fairly quickly, but I'm just going off the cuff here. But if we were to review this sometime in hopefully early December, and at that point it was accepted, the architect would probably take at least 2 months to finish up the drawings for it, and then we'd start the bid process. That's generally 5 to 6 weeks, and then you add another month for the guarantee maximum price to be presented. So I didn't do all that math in my head, but we're probably in March, April time frame at least before, probably like April, before we're breaking ground, if everything goes well.
What do you think you could get us that additional information coming from
I'm sorry, for the
Like-
renderings?
Yeah, so you're saying that's the earliest we could probably see something cohesively as a board would be December?
I would, probably so, just because they're still working through the ideas to reduce it, and assuming they continue that process, because that helps them to see where they can make some changes to lower the overall cost. I would need to talk to them, but I'm thinking first week or so in December, not December 20th.
I think everybody would feel comfortable if we could get that. Everybody's agreed to make themselves available, so if we need to do that, I think it's that important.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to do it by phone, that's fine with me. I didn't mean to be the only objection there. That's fine if we can get the material and look at that. I think that's up to the
To your
board.
point, I think it'd be dependent on how you guys are going to present that information. I think it's very powerful to have us all in the same room and see it. And if everybody's willing, even if they want to appear video conference, I can FaceTime somebody in so that they can see it. I'd rather have everybody have an opportunity to run something like this and really consider it.
Well, it sounds like the appearance is probably more important to everybody than if we gotta give up something, than the square footage. If we lose the square footage, is that really gonna hurt anything?
Oh, yeah.
Growth.
Well, there is no growth in this building as designed.
Well, I
It
think
just fits what we are now. We didn't have the money to build for growth. This fits our program now. If you cut the square footage, then you're probably taking a department out, right, James?
Yes.
I don't want it to be based on superficiality either. I mean, it's more to it than just how it looks. It's got to be what y'all want ultimately, and so there's some combination of it. Plus, what it does to attract students to go to that facility. It's got to be some combination of all of that.
So some guiding words, you know. I know that's hard because we want it all.
Sure, and that's unfortunately.
We want our building back.
At
the old price.
But if
At the
it's,
old
you know,
price.
I think there's arguments to be made, and I think the board will entertain all that. We just need to understand. It's more of that information. I think you'll have a solid response from the board. So can we table this and then reconvene it in a special session whenever that?
Yes, we don't even have to table, we just don't take action.
Okay, so there's no action in relation to this, and we'll table that item for another day. Item 18-09, the Gunn College of Health Sciences and Human Services Landscaping and Parking Project Authorization. Mr. Cameron, please explain this recommendation.
Sure. As I described earlier in the construction update, this started out with having a landscape architect doing the design for the health science quad, or the quad that's east of the building. And we decided it would be better if the landscape architect was overseeing the health science area also, and potentially we wanted to be able to add the walkway south towards Comanche, and also provide emergency vehicle access to that side of McCoy and Martin, which was a benefit. And so we've also, the bronze Mustang statues that are shown in the rendering too are not part of the initial contract price, so we wanted to potentially add that to it, and all that's rolled into this.
So can I have a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
How does our decision to delay with respect to the big building, does that impact this?
Yes, it
I mean,
was.
does it make sense to approve this before we see the other?
We're not going to design the health science area until that building is defined, but there's plenty of other work and design that can go on while we're waiting for that to be resolved. So any changes that go around for the health science building, I guess I don't picture them to be so huge that we couldn't do some minor modifications to the contract. Personally, to me, I'd like to be able to move forward with this so the architect can keep it all in one unit. But we're probably not going to start the construction until we know what we're doing with this health science building too. I don't know if I answered your question.
So it can move forward independent, it's just gonna be really, with that in mind, you're still gonna be looking at the overall footprint and the building itself. This space is fairly defined in the plan.
Right.
And independent, okay.
You said it better than that.
Well, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 18-10, MSU Policies and Procedures Manual Change, Policy 4.146. In August, we had an opportunity to review a draft of this modified policy now titled Honorific and Gift-Related Namings. Policy is presented today for approval. Mr. Whitmore, please review this item.
Mr. Chairman, just to review in August. I know you've had a chance to read policy draft for 4.146, and a couple things to frame our discussion. A good reason to look at this again is to make clarity as we enter our comprehensive campaign for our donors. Our donors deserve that. Number two, it's pretty much best practices and standard operating procedures to review and make sure you have your policies in line. And you look at minimums such as for endowed professors and those kind of things. And that's one of those things that with Barry's help and also our campaign council, we looked at Texas peers, national peers, and again, that's part of the document you see. You also gave us a charge to have the best practice in governance, and this is one of those steps that we believe allows us to proceed with the charge you gave us. I would make a couple notes too. In section C5, and naming recognitions, where it states the recognition gives target is 10 years. And again, that said, that's a target. That is a best practice target. It doesn't mean that it's cast in stone. As you can see for the policy, that can be approved. As it relates to changes perhaps with other existing buildings and naming things that are already on campus, this policy does not change those. Those agreements stay as they are. Any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Before we discuss further, can I have a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions from Mr. Bidmore in relation to this?
I just have one question in regards to the donation. When you name a facility, it's based on, is this normal, the minimum donation of no less than 33%?
That's pretty normal, Ms. Marks. Yes, it is, because you want to have some of that money up front, and it oftentimes is 33, 40%. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Looking at our peer institutions, are all the numbers in line with what they're doing as far as endowing, scholarships, unrestricted lecture series? Did we pull these from any other universities?
We pulled those from with our campaign council. We pulled them from Texas universities and national. They're very much in line with peer institutions, Shayla, like ours. They're not going to be necessarily what you would see at A&M or UT, but our peer. And also we looked at COPLAC institutions.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 18-11, ratification of Ascension Artworks. The administration recommends ratification of the ascensioning of the items shown in the board book. Could I have a motion to ratify this action as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes business to come before this committee. We will now move to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Dr. Gibbons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee will now come to order. Members joining me today are Ms. Marks, Dr. Sweat, and Mr. Hessing. Are you online?
I am.
Okay. Thank you. Our first item is 18-12, the approval of minutes of our committee meeting held August 3rd, 2017. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. The next item is 18-13, the faculty report. Dr. David Carlson, Faculty Senate Chairman, will present this report. Dr. Carlson.
Mr. Gibbons, rest of the board, it's great to be here. This is a time of year where as faculty members, we're usually hunkered down in our offices, piled up with a number of things to do as we get towards the end of the semester. So it's nice to escape for a few minutes. We just want to briefly cover a few things from a faculty perspective. Right now, as you are more aware, we are going through a number of policies and procedures and revisiting a lot of different things on campus, compliance related. This has been an interesting experience. It's been a lot of work and a lot of changes that are occurring at the same time. Barry's nodding over there because he shouldered a lot of that. And this has some trickle down and implications for the faculty. And so on the one hand, sometimes we get a little overwhelmed, kind of drinking out of a fire hose. But on the other hand, I do want to say that the way that this has been addressed, the way that all the changes have been implemented or the changes have been discussed. I think we're certainly moving in a positive direction, and more importantly, we're doing that in a very collaborative manner. So there have been some significant changes that have occurred with relatively little public and verbal and outspoken distress, because we've been working really hard to get that taken care of at the front end. Right now, we're wading through the IT handbook, and that's there's certainly security concerns, and then there's service delivery concerns, and the IT folks and the faculty have been working together for a couple of months at this point on that, and trying to strike that appropriate balance. And we're very pleased with the way that has been rolling out. We are in the middle of conducting a follow-up faculty satisfaction survey. We've done this. The most recent iteration was about 3 years ago. We've done a couple surveys over the last couple of years in order to address specific issues or concerns of faculty. This is more of a general survey so that we know as a Senate what the aggregate concerns are of all the faculty members. We're about 2/3 of the way through the data collection process, and so I would anticipate a report in the next board meeting. Kind of an early eyeballs look, things are looking very positive. Some of those gains that we made, especially in terms of relationship between kind of faculty and their departments and the deans and the institution level administration, the gains that we made a couple of years ago and that we saw are looking like they'll hold consistent. So things are very positive in that regard. This particular survey is looking at a lot of different aspects of faculty life, including burnout. In spring, you go through all of the faculty that have been recommended for tenure and promotion, and you see the amount of effort and the variety and the of activity that they're involved in. And one of the things that I know, student retention is very important, but faculty retention is important, and it's important that we have a faculty that is able to engage and isn't kind of an industry buzzword burnt out. We know that burnout affects interpersonal relationships, and it affects people individually as well. So we're looking at that this year as well, and as well as how faculty can reach out and be a part of important pieces on campus. So we'll be collecting those results and continue collecting those and have a report in the next board meeting. In terms of concerns, there's a number of items that are coming up a little bit later addressing student retention, addressing enrollment, and student recruiting. Obviously, I can answer questions regarding faculty opinions as we get to those items, but I think the short version is there are a couple of significant concerns on faculty mind. Some of them appear to be overlapping, but they really are separate concerns. The first is in terms of student preparedness, and I think, Linwood, you can address this as well as anyone, that the preparedness level of high school graduates is slowly maybe sliding backwards a little bit. The expectations and the mode of delivery that at the university level sometimes exceed their preparedness, and that creates a number of problems from the student's perspective. It creates a number of problems from the faculty perspective as well. And so that's certainly one concern. And we're working with the provost's office, and we're working kind of again through this survey to identify ways that we can build the faculty skills to kind of get these students up to speed. Also related to student preparedness and enrollment is just having the students and being able to recruit the students for our campus. Obviously, as a faculty member, you want the best and the brightest, right? But there are a number of students that we may not be reaching at this particular point, and so we're very excited with some of the changes and the recommendations that will be coming later on in this meeting, as we recognize the importance of casting our nets wider, because there are a number of students that may not have the opportunity to be here and benefit from the experiences that we can provide. So we're very, very excited with the positive movement in those directions. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr.
Any questions?
Are there any questions? I had one question in thinking of the faculty as you represent them and talk with them. I went to university because, in a way, of certain professors who were there because I wanted to learn, I wanted to teach them. And we have a number of faculty members, yourself part of that, that have a really, really great reputation. So do the faculty members feel that they have a part in the growth that we're trying to get, that they themselves or attract the students and have any sense of wanting to pull them in because of their own reputation?
I would say yes to that. I know that we have the opportunity through a number of outreach events and recruiting events to participate in that. I know that faculty are involved in the athletics recruiting, and Kyle can talk about that. But and we do have the opportunity to participate, and certainly, as much as we can, we would love to be helpful in that process.
I think that's critical to our growth, that students want to come because we have great faculty here. And I'd like for you to convey that on behalf of the board, that we really respect the faculty here and think they are absolutely key to getting the right kind of students here.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We thank you for your report. Our next item is 18-14, the staff report. Mr. Newman Wong, the new chairman of the MSU Staff Senate, will present the report. Mr. Wong.
My name is Newman Wong. I have come to speak a while back. To introduce myself, I work in institutional research and assessment as a research analyst. So some of the numbers you guys get, I help with compiling them too. And the Staff Senate is still active on campus and try to do our duties to share the governance on campus. And we still have representation on the Strategic Planning Committee and the Budget Oversight Committee. And we try to keep our staff informed. So in September, we have Dr. Lam to come to speak to us about the Flower Mounds campus. And we also have Ms. Julie Gaynor to tell us about the branding updates. In October, we have Ms. Angie Ray, our past Staff Senate Chair, also the Director of the Wellness Center, to talk about the new personal training services provided by the exercise physiology undergraduate and graduate students. We also have Ms. Kathy Rice from Payroll to tell us the updates on the time tracking system. And we continue to have our Make a Difference program to recognize staff who go above and beyond their job duties. So we got Mr. AJ Lopez from our social media coordinator recognized, Mr. Matt Steimer from information technology. He's one of our programmers. And we also have Ms. Julie Salazar from Human Resources. She did a great job when all the staff and faculty are panicking about our switch to our new insurance. We don't have a lot of providers at the time, so she really went above and beyond to talk to all the concerned staff and faculty and to make sure we feel good. And now we have a good list of providers to choose from. So that's all I have for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wong, and congratulations on your election as chairman of the Staff Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Our next item is 18-15, the student government report. Ms. Maria Pena, the SGA president, will present the SGA report. Ms. Pena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as a part of student government, we've had a couple of things that we've had to deal with, especially in the month of September. We started off the year hitting it off pretty positive, wanting to provide events and activities for the students to get to know who the Student Government Association was and what we do exactly. And then when we started to notice, I guess, the crises that our students were being affected by, like the hurricanes in Dhaka, and then when Robert Grace passed away, as a part of student government, what we had to do was ensure that the climate on campus was a safe environment and to ensure that our students felt like we were providing enough support, whether that be to the avenue of our office or with the assistance of Dr. Lam and Matt. We ensured that our students knew that what we were doing as a part of student government was, I guess, in their best interests. And so when the hurricanes occurred and when some of our students who were affected by the DACA program happened, what we did as a part of student government was to ensure that everybody was aware of the programs that we did have on campus. One of the things that I really try to highlight the most when we when we speak to our students is that we do have programs on campus, and so we try to communicate the things that we are currently doing. Because I think one of the biggest problems that we have had in the past with our students is that we don't necessarily communicate with one another what we do have going on campus. One of the biggest concerns that is often relayed back to us, or me sometimes, is that we're not doing enough for them, but we are. It's just that they're not aware of what is going on campus for them. And so in September, that is what we dealt with a lot in our office, was the students who were affected by the crises that were essentially held to the natural disasters. And then with what happened with Robert Graves, we really wanted to ensure that the sense of community here that we pride ourselves in Midwestern was taken seriously. And so we passed, not necessarily a resolution, but we called to action what we would like to see from our institution and what we as students wanted to ensure that we did for one another. And so with the assistance of Dr. Lamb and Matt, we started a GoFundMe account to raise some money for Robert Graves, and I know that the football team, with the assistance of Kyle Williams, they also raised $20,000, and we raised about $6,000 as well. So in total, that's about $26,000 that his mom could later on use for whatever it is that she needed them to be used for. And later on, we also passed in the Senate the concept of providing a plaque on a bench in front of the DLG Coliseum in memory of Robert Graves. And so that will be, I guess, like a living legacy of him, and not just, I guess, what Robert did here at Midwestern, but just the sense of community and what we have here for our students. And so for the month of September, that was basically what we did, was just handle little things here and there to make sure that our students were not all over the place, because I feel like it was important to address, I guess, the climate on campus, because those things tend to send us, I don't know how you would say it, just everybody gets really like riled up with their emotions. And so I guess as student body representatives, our job is to mediate through those things. And then through October, we focused mainly on homecoming. And the first thing that we did was decide to do an event during homecoming. It's one of the first events that we hosted was Field Day, which was rather successful, where we provided outdoor activities here in the quad for the students to participate during homecoming, and then they were provided with awards and prizes. And then we also had to take into account our torchlight parade tradition that we have here on campus. And so Dr. Lamb and I met in the beginning of October to address how we were going to handle the situation, I guess. And so with his help and the help of Dr. Green, Mario Ramirez, and I'm not quite, I think it was the president of the Alumni Association who also assisted us in participating in a task force where we were going to study the climate on campus. And we provided surveys and all the information that we were able to acquire with research, with why we started the Torchlight Parade in 1985, and exactly why we wanted to continue the Torchlight Parade in light of what happened in Charlottesville. And so the overwhelming majority of what we got back in response to the surveys and the reports and all the research that we did together was that the students wanted to continue the Torchlight Parade. And so the next step after that was to, I guess, justify the reasoning why we would continue the Torchlight Parade. And so from there, the next step in that project is to find a justification for the next year to continue it, because I think it is important to address the symbolism and what it means at other places and what a torchlight means to other people, so that we're sensitive to what we are doing on campus. But the overwhelming majority of the students, about 90% from when we got back in the surveys and the research, was that they wanted to continue the Torchlight Parade. And so that is what we did in October. And now, since we're in November, what we are doing currently is finishing the last amendments in our bylaws and in our constitution with what we want to do internally in student government before we present it to our Senate, so that they have multiple sessions to not only look over the legislation that we hope to pass to make our student government more effective internally, but also be able to give their own suggestions, because I think it's important for them to realize how their Senate meetings, and not just their Senate meetings, but just like their interactions with us and with the students that they're supposed to represent, is comprised of within the bylaws itself, which we have a lot of language and grammatical errors in our bylaws that we keep finding, and I think Shayla, out of everybody, can attest to how frustrating it is passing legislation in the Senate. We have had conversations internally about attempting to restructure our student government once again. So we'll see how that goes, because I think we could have a more effective student government if we don't have almost 200 senators, because that is technically what we're allowed to have, considering since we are comprised of student organizations as representatives for senators, we could have 200 senators, and quite frankly, that is not necessarily the most effective way of running, but there are ways of making our student government more effective. And so currently, that is what we're doing, and we also have a survey that Jacob Warren is our student representative today, but he and Matthew Park have created a survey to, I guess, see the overall, content with the institution and how they feel in regards to dining, services, housing, safety on campus. And so once we get that information back, we'll see how we can assist our students as a part of student government and what we can do to make, I guess, the institution a little bit better for them. I personally am very excited to see the improvements that we're doing through student government for our students. And if you have any questions, I can answer them. But if not, that's the end of my report. So.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pinion. We thank you for the work that you're doing. Item 18-16 is the athletics report. Mr. Williams is here to review his report and to provide additional information. Mr. Williams.
Yes. Thank you. I come today as the your next director of athletics. I say that because it gives me to know that I'm very humble. I'm very blessed to have an opportunity. This is a great facility. This is a great opportunity to be here. We've got a great university. I'm very passionate about it, and I kept thinking next year will be 40 years in Wichita Falls for me. And for a guy that was going back to Hutchinson, Kansas, no place like home, Shane. It's been great. It's been awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. So first of all, let me just thank you for that, and Dr. Shipley for her confidence in me. The biggest thing that we've got going, certainly, or have had going, is the LSC, the Heartland Conference coming to our conference in 2 years, 19. We will be the biggest Division II conference in the country. There is power in numbers, and so we're excited about that. We're excited for the opportunity to. Now, we didn't get any football out of that. I will tell you that, which is still an issue for us, as you all know, in Division II especially. But we're working on schedules as we speak, and so I'm hoping that we can take care of that and for next year. Football season has started off great, as you all know. We go to Eastern this weekend. Hopefully everything will go well there so we can have a regional playoff game next Saturday, or maybe even get a bye for the 25th game. So we're working on that. And if I need hotel space and I can't get a hotel space, I'm going to ask everybody in there to have a little bed and breakfast for the team that we play. So it's kind of been an issue there. Women's soccer is playing as we speak. Is anybody on live sats? Okay, not either. We're playing in Dallas as we speak at DBU, Colorado School of Mines. So I'm hoping that we take that one today. Homecoming was great. We invited 3 of our student athletes that, as you can see, Ricky Cobb, Larry Wiggins, and Daniel Polk. This is the first time really I got to talk to Daniel Polk, and he's everything that Dr. Johnston said he was. And what a guy. What an ambassador for Midwestern State University, and is just a great kid with a family. And so, and certainly Larry Wiggins having back has been great. And of course, Ricky Cobb and the tragedy with him several years ago, his family was here as well. So a couple things. Coach Lynn took a couple of his kids to nationals, placed 5th overall. Great opportunity for Midwestern again to promote and market the tennis program. He's doing a great job. Cross country, has been plagued with some injuries. We're done. So Kobe's on to the next year. He's recruiting as we speak, so that should be good as well. One of the biggest things that I'm excited about is our new tutoring and academic support program through Dr. Garrison and Dr. Johnston, and that's up and going. We want to do better in the classroom. We have an opportunity to do better in the classroom because of some of the things we've talked about and implemented, whether it's 16 new tutors that we have in the program, to more study hours. It's just a great opportunity for our student athletes to do a good job in the classroom, and that's why we're here. We know that. So more to come on that. And then finally, as we were talking about the Robert Graves situation, we continue to get money. We do have the GoFundMe account still open. I was brought a $500 check again yesterday from a local person. We continue to give them what we can through GoFundMe, and I appreciate the SGA and their efforts as well. The Graves family was here. For those that didn't get to see that, Saturday, she actually told me that there was a little closure, which is exactly what they needed to do, and it was a big, just a big part of what we did for them. This was a thank you, is the way they looked at it, coming here, and it truly was a real blessing for them to be there. We get stronger because they're stronger. I truly believe that, and that's why we have 24 strong. So that was just a great opportunity to say thank you to them, but in turn they're saying thank you to Midwestern State University, and so we will continue to give them money. Just a little bit of that, the accidental death policy that we have, as well as the NCAA, is going to give them several $1,000s for expenses and that sort of thing, and so that's in place as we speak. So that's going well for them, and they're very appreciative. So I just, again, we'll continue to, we go to Eastern New Mexico this weekend. I found out, Dr. Shipley and myself found out that Eastern New Mexico wants to give us a check for Robert Graves. So we have several in our Lone Star Conference that are stepping up, as we say, and want to provide money as well. So we're in a good conference. We got a great conference. We got a great leadership in our conference, and I look forward to the Heartland being a part of us in 2 years. So hopefully, number one team in the country in soccer, men's soccer, we'll see them on Sunday. Hopefully that can keep going. And of course, football and women's soccer is doing well. Volleyball has had a better year. We'll tell you that. We're going to miss the tournament by about 2 games, maybe. But it's been a good year for volleyball as well. So, any questions? Yes.
Well, if I'm reading this right, Kyle, previously women have entered the regulation tied at 0.
Okay, you're on. Okay. So that means overtime, 10-minute overtime, and then another 10-minute overtime, and then penalty kicks. And I put my money on our goalie. So, for what that's worth. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Kyle.
Good question. On the conference, before you go, on the conference when they come in, is it going to retain its identity as Lone Star Conference?
Lone Star Conference.
So they're coming in.
Yeah, Heartland's going away, and they're coming to the Lone Star Conference. That's correct.
Any prospect within the schools that are coming over for football programs?
There's a possibility of UT Tyler, possibly. They've got to go to Division II. They've got to actually send a waiver by February to the NCAA. They're Division III as we speak, and so they're trying to get into Division II. And there is some talk of football, but after sending them some expenses and that sort of thing, they may not go that direction as we speak.
And I guess, so what's the predominant Heartland sport? Is it basketball?
Everybody plays basketball, men's and women's. Soccer, women's soccer, men's soccer is good. And men's and women's tennis. And a lot of these folks play baseball.
Really?
Yes.
How fascinating.
Yeah.
Sean, you on the phone? Catch up with them later.
No, he just muted, so.
Yeah. Great.
Yes, I'm on the phone. I know what you want to say. Just say it.
Just saying. I'm glad to hear. I think the conference is going to be a great opportunity for us. I look forward to, being able to fill that football schedule. I'm sure it's tough for you, but hopefully that'll come up with that too.
You bet.
Thank you, Kyle, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 18-17 is the Fall 2017 Enrollment Report and Upper Class Student Retention Discussion. The board book includes the Fall Enrollment Report as well as a summary of retention initiatives. Dr. Lamb and Dr. Johnston will provide information for our discussion.
All right, good afternoon. As you can see in your agenda, item 1817 is the Fall 2017 Enrollment Report and Upper Class Student Retention. And so for this fall, our overall enrollment, it's census 6080, so that's an increase of 0.26% from fall of 16. Notable in that is an increase in first-time, full-time entering students, a decrease in returning freshmen. So the increase in first-time, full-time students, 11%, decrease in continuing freshmen, 16%. And those are freshmen or students who were freshmen the previous fall that did not accumulate 30 semester credit hours to be classified as a sophomore. And so the decrease there was either additional individuals moving up to sophomore or not retaining. But notable in our enrollment report this year, and what we noticed is approximately 9.5% of our spring enrollment that they were otherwise eligible to re-enroll for the fall, so they had not graduated and were not academically or disciplinary separated from the institution, did not enroll for the fall of 17. And so that's a significant loss and very difficult to overcome. Of that number, about half were classified as juniors and seniors. About a quarter were in the allied health or the pre-allied health programs. And so Dr. Johnston and I worked on identifying areas of concern and crafting a proposal that you have in your board packet to address those. And I'll let Dr. Johnston discuss that.
Sure. When you look at that 25% or so that are health science majors, they roughly fall into two groups. We have very large completion degree programs, particularly in radiologic science, respiratory care, for example. These are students that have a professional degree, they have an associate degree, they have their license credentials to practice, so they don't need this baccalaureate degree to continue what they're doing. They need the degree to go to the next step. They're looking for upward mobility. So the way it's currently structured, I think we give too much opportunity for life to get in the way, and they stop out and continue on. So you see one of those solutions, the parts of term. What that will do when we bring that to the Wichita Falls campus, we're using that in the Flower Mound campus now and working out some of the bugs with the logistics of delivering that way. But essentially, parts of term moves a half-time student to a three-quarter time student. So it accelerates, a means for accelerating their way through it, lessens the opportunity for life to get in the way, so to speak, so they can continue on. The other part of that, looking at were a number of health sciences or pre-allied health. Those programs are competitive admission, so if they miss that admission cycle, if they're not quite on that selected list, what do we do with those students? So we're looking at identifying a number of things that will help us with that. The signature minors that we're working on, and I'll get an opportunity to present that to you a little bit in the morning, but a series of minors to better understand specifically what these students want to do with their degree. We can circle them back, let them work on this minor that will ultimately enhance their life goals, their career path, and it kind of spaces them out a little bit, let us get them into the system
a little bit later down the way. You see part of that about coaching and mentoring, as Colin mentioned earlier about TASP and the restructuring of tutoring academic support programs. I've placed academic counselors in each of the colleges, and that allows them to really become expert in the majors by college. They report directly to the dean. They liaise between the students and the faculty and help strengthen that relationship. It also frees the faculty member to assume more of a mentoring and coaching role, particularly in junior senior level, which is what they should. So they'll still advise and still help in that respect, but we feel like the sooner that the faculty member connects with them and maintains that relationship throughout their degree, the more successful they'll be. So there's some that may be a lack of fit issue. There's a strong interest in faculty to identify and engage with their majors sooner, freshman, sophomore year. If there's a strong identification or likelihood they will be successful in that path, we'll work with them to do that. If perhaps they would be, their interests are better suited to another degree, we can help direct them there. I think finally in that you saw community college partners. We're partnering with a number of these, and that's part of what feeds our completion degrees. Most of these health science programs, for example, BWS falls into this category a lot too. They complete that professional part, and then they move to this completion degree, finish the baccalaureate, give them the mobility career enhancement later on. So we're making direct relationships, articulations with these community colleges. When they finish their degree, they move directly into one of our completions and continue on. So that relationship, if we lose them, so to speak, to a community college early on, we're catching them in the completion of junior, senior year. So kind of tying all those together. Is there questions for that part?
Just curious, has there been any thought to sending, like, I don't want to call it an exit interview, but like a letter asking the persons who are no longer with us why, if they care to share with us why they didn't return? Or have we done that?
There's some follow-up, and it was interesting that you asked. The list that we had when we started working on the problem, I had a number of our faculty and department chairs asking for this list. They want to call these, and so they're wanting that direct. So it goes back to that desire on part of our faculty to connect with these students sooner, and that mentoring and coaching, role. And particularly is when you reach a junior senior level, it's really disheartening. You really want to know what it is that is getting in the way. We want to remove those roadblocks. So their credit, I think, all the way around their faculty and staff that are doing it and want to do more.
I just think that would be a good idea to give us some idea, because we can kind of speculate based on our knowledge base, but to actually hear from them and understand why maybe they didn't return might be helpful.
We do to about roughly 70% of those that do not return. So we do through our financial aid office, of which a little north of 70% of our students are on financial aid. So for those who are eligible to return and don't, we do send those of the completed ones we receive. Most often it has to do with personal reasons, but certainly there's plenty that think they cannot be academically successful. Work schedules, financial issues, it's primarily those four areas.
Are you asking that anything they have as information on the group they were just discussing be summarized and given to the board?
That would be nice. I mean, I just think
we can do that.
Just having, because this is a large number, and I know it's not a number that we've seen before.
It would also be interesting to see the age. I mean, are we talking about life getting in the way, or is it academic? And then I have a question in regards to, are these programs currently, or will they begin this next semester, or do we have any of these already in place?
Some are in place. The parts of the term we're using in Flower Mound now, that's a coordination of business office, financial aid, registrar. Because what we're doing is you're offering one course the first 8 weeks of the long semester, one course the second 8 weeks of a long semester, and one that spans the entire traditional 16 weeks. So the start and stop dates and the reporting dates and some of those things, there are some behind the scenes things that we're working out with a smaller population in Flower Mound with the intent to bring those to the Wichita Falls campus, as soon as possible. Some of the others are in progress and working on. Certainly there are a number of minors here. We've reorganized TASP, and that's in place now. So it will be a while before we see the results, but and I'll get to talk a little bit more about that in the morning, some of the other initiatives. So some are well on their way, some are just getting started.
So you will address the living, learning community tomorrow?
Yes, part of, and I think, Kristen, are you talking about those shortly, since she'll present that.
Right.
Quick question, so if I'm doing the math, we're saying that 25.2% are in the allied health program, have not returned. And even adding all those other, if we're looking at 65% that are unaccounted for, are those just kind of a little scattered around in all the different, kind of assorted?
They are. We've actually tracked all of them, and they're all across the majors and all across the disciplines. BAAS has a fair amount, about 5%. Undecided majors, about 5%. Not surprising. That's even more reason to attach individuals to majors earlier in their careers. But yeah, the rest are just kind of scattered about throughout the majors and throughout their classification.
So being as that still kind of the major bulk of that almost 9% that we lost, like what are we thinking about that's in place to address those? I mean, anything, is this going to carry over to them as well? Yeah. Because this is kind of targeted.
Yeah, this is targeted because this bubbled up as by far the largest group where we could have one cohesive strategy around. Now, I believe some of the items that Dr. Garrison will be describing shortly with the first year experience, academic seminars, and learning communities were built to address many of the other ones, and that was the impetus behind those.
There's a smaller number of these if you look at across majors that, juniors, seniors, a number of reasons. And I think, again, part of that advising and having the academic counselor, having the faculty member with the opportunities to connect with them. Some aren't able to progress in a particular program because of grades. Some of that may be of not identifying a lack of fit or a good direction for them earlier. Some of it is redirecting a little bit later. So some programs that majors or degrees that concentrations we think would be of interest to pick those up as well.
Correlation, I guess I'm wondering is, Dr. Gibbons made a point earlier about, admittance of students who are less than in relation to what our posted, academic standards are for entrance. And so I just wonder what that number would look like if they correlate to like they struggled through their first 2 years and that's why they're not returning. Do we have that information? Go ahead.
I think Chris had to talk a little bit about that about the task force. But there are some of those. Sorry to keep referencing in the morning, but one of the things that we're working to develop to begin summer of 18 is a bridge program. Realizing in a number of areas what our student population is and meeting them where they are, and a bridge. This first phase of bridge will look at those that are required to take one or more developmental courses that are admitted by review in an effort to work with them in an intensive summer session type format so that they are college ready when they begin the fall semester. We have a lot of first gen students. They don't have a role model, they don't have a roadmap to college life. So recognizing that student population. So it's not they're not capable. I don't think they all have the tools. I think that's part of what you'll see in hearing this.
Yeah, and I would add to that, understanding what the Texas population is and increasingly becoming with first gen students and understanding the size that we want to be. I think Dr. Johnson's absolutely right. It's a lot of it's about how we bridge those students to be successful.
So when that kind of raises a question that I know you guys are wrestling with is our standards. Do we need to adjust those? Do we need to look at those again? I mean, we went in and said we're going to raise them, and then we're saying, well, most of the students, a large percentage of them are coming in and they're not meeting that anyways. And so are we scaring away a large population of students that really would benefit from this and could absolutely be successful here by saying, like, you can't get in even though maybe you could get in. I'm not gonna fly because it looks like I can't get in.
I think that's a reasonable question, and I think Dr. Garrison's going to address some of that in her.
All on you.
Could I just rephrase before you get away? I think what Chair Sanchez is asking you to do, Keith, is when you look at the melt that we had, would you please study how many of them were provisionally approved as compared to how many of them were automatically accepted?
Right, no, absolutely, understood, and we'll do that.
Do we have any efforts to re-attract those that left? So back to what Regent Breck said, since we're sending out those emails or letters and asking why, are we also saying, is there anything we can do to bring you back?
We do through admissions, and in fact, one of the categories that we typically report, we don't break it out on the enrollment report here, but that we track internally are readmitted students, which are students who stopped out for a semester or more. Absolutely.
I'm curious, of the 25% that are in the allied health programs, so to qualify for those programs, is there a qualifying exam? Is it based on grades? What is the criteria that determines if they can go on?
For the primary pathway or for the completion?
Yes.
For both. Primary pathway is competitive. Their standards vary a little bit, but it's they've established a minimum GPA on the core coursework, particularly courses that they will use as foundations to build as they go forward, anatomy and physiology, microbiology, those kinds of courses that they establish foundations. So most of them are a point system along that line. And it really is kind of the mercy of the applicant pool. We've seen applicant pools in the past that were, for example, there were a couple of years it was tougher to get into dental hygiene than medical school for a number of these. It's just the nature of the pool is most were female and going in, but they were 3.4, 3.5 average GPA. So extremely competitive. So what we do with those, if we can circle them back next year, you complete a little bit more, the points raised and go through. For the completion degree, it is based on their licensure and certification. So if they've completed the associate degree, they are licensed in good standing, qualified to practice, and there's room in that admitting cohort, then they will take them in. And they space those. Respiratory and radiology are taking, I think, an average of 30 per semester, 30 new completion degree students per semester.
Okay, so there are limited spaces available. Okay, but the students are very aware of where they are on that path, that they don't end up at the end of their sophomore year, and it's a big surprise that they're not going to be able to move on. Right.
I don't think so. Historically, the advisors have worked with them and guided them in. That was the other reason I thought it was important to have now academic counselors by college to work more directly with those students from the minute they step on campus through their admission to their chosen program and move through.
These students that are coming in from other institutions going into our online program?
That's the
that something new?
Completion degree piece of it. You're asking how many in each one?
Do we have a lot of students in the online program?
Yes, there's, let's see, respiratory is over the 200 mark now. Radiology and that completion degree is carrying about 300 plus. The nursing is RN to BS and that completion degree. It started an accelerated program, so that was kind of put on the back burner a little bit. They've focused that in Flower Mound campus, and it's back to member there, so I expect that one will really start to take off and have similar numbers. But any given time, there's about 300 floating in that program. Unfortunately, that's the stop out piece. They don't have to have it, so if work schedule gets a little tough, life gets a little tough, they stop a semester and try to get them in and through in an expedient manner through that. So.
Is a problem that we've seen in the allied health this year that's been focused on, is that something that's been there all along, or has it been increase because that's an attractive program. We're getting more students in their area, and it's likely that some of them won't be able to move on with it.
I think with the completion degree, that's probably always been about there. It's just kind of the nature of, and if we don't change that, if we don't address those circumstances, the parts of term, for example, and having these the faculty and counselors saying, you know, you're almost there, you just need this to finish, and stronger effort. But I think that's been there. The those that are in a primary pathway or competing to get in, that has waxed and waned over the years. It depends on when the job market is tough. Healthcare is considered a safe bet in terms of degrees. So a lot will flock to it. When job market is good across all sectors, it'll kind of spread out so that those numbers just kind of right away over years.
Dr. Land, is this typical of what all of our sister universities are facing? We're not anomalous in this, are we?
With the retention?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know their specific spring to fall overall retention like we're measuring. I do have information on freshman retention, and we're about average.
That's what I was thinking. This is I'm thinking, and my perception is this is an overall education problem that everyone is facing. Is that true?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have information from other schools with this specific measurement.
All right.
Dr. Givens, I would guess that these are fairly high numbers, but I think what happened is because our percentage of enrollment is more heavily in the health professions, it has come to our awareness now, and I'm guessing that most professional schools might not have this sort of retention issue, but in the health professions with the accreditation and the combination of skills, it's more likely to see people drop out before they graduate. So if you go to a university that doesn't have as many students in the health professions, you're not going to see, it's unusual to see seniors leaving in this number.
I think healthcare also has a standardized criteria that you might not see in other majors.
And that's why we'd like to find a softer science side of the health profession so that when people have said they want to do healthcare, is there another avenue they could tread and we wouldn't lose them and healthcare wouldn't lose them.
That's one of the things we, not just MSU, but institutions like that have health science programs struggle with these different accrediting agents that you point out in the standards. A senior can fail even in the 11th hour, so to speak. So what do they do with all those credits that and they can't transfer? They're just
And the impact of that rolls down to new students coming on. Yeah.
And so there are related areas that are gaining popularity. The patient navigator, for example, can use those that background knowledge and add some things to it and shift gears for them, so to speak, into another related healthcare field.
Well, thank you very much. This item was presented as a point of information only. No action is taken. Item 18-18 is the Dallas-Fort Worth expansion update. Information is included in the board book, and Dr. Lamb is here to summarize and answer questions. Dr. Lamb.
Thank you. So in Dallas-Fort Worth, we are currently, or they are currently bricking the building. So if any of you have driven past it in the last week or so, you will see brick going up on the facade. It's largely finished out on the interior. They're still working on some of the systems. Right now, we are working with our IT and furniture packages, wrestling with those, trying to get those spec'd out exactly as we want and within budget. And Dr. Foley has been a huge help on that, so thank you. Helps us organize our thoughts very well on that one. The partnership's going well with NCTC. We really like the collaboration and the work and working with the individuals there. At this point, we do have a director on board. I believe since the last board meeting in August, we've hired an additional, an IT specialist, since this will be a heavily technologically heavy campus. We've also hired a student services coordinator who will help kind of be a generalist with anything from admissions to financial aid to advising and the like. We are scheduled right now to take possession of the building on January 15th. Just right before classes begin. we are increasingly, believe it or not, increasingly confident they will make that date. As we see the activity in the dry weather lately. So things are going good. Our enrollment for this fall was 63 students at 561 semester credit hours, and that is right on budget for what we estimated in semester credit hour production for the fall. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lynn.
Dr. Gibbons, before you move on, how about we take a short break from the room?
All right.
Why don't we recess for 5 minutes and we'll all come back?
Hi.
7, 10. Okay, let's get her fired up. Okay, Dr. Gibbons, we're back to you. Feel free to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee will resume with item 18-19, the December 2017 graduating class. The administration recommends approval of the candidates for December graduation as were presented in the book. There are 516 students on the list compared to 490 in 2016. May I have a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries. Item 18-20, the first year experience report. The board book includes information regarding the first year experience at MSU. Dr. Kristen Garrison, our Associate Vice President for Undergraduate Education and Assessment, will review this information. She will then introduce two students to present the results of their research on learning communities. Dr. Garrison.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So first I'd like to share with you information about our first year experience. You've heard it mentioned. I'm so happy to hear my name get dropped so many times that the board members have questions. The first year experience is one of the items on our strategic plan, and it has been deliberately developed in order to address some of the concerns we have with regard to nationwide issues with regard to student preparedness. There's just a lot of research that shows that students, regardless of their test scores, their GPAs, that they struggle to meet demands of college. And so many universities are developing first year experiences. Ours links directly to our strategic plan, the 2017 to 2022 plan that was approved, and we are working to develop programming that links academic coursework to outside programming because we basically believe that if students make friends and they make grades, they will stay, and that seems to be what the research tells us as well. So our model is comprised of three components. There's the fall learning community, and that's where we pair two academic courses. I heard someone mention the living learning community. We are currently looking into that with housing, but that is another logistical challenge. Christy Schulte and Dr. Lamb can certainly speak to what we've done so far is having learning communities or living learning communities within residence halls, but this model looks at pairing the academic courses. We also are developing, we're in the process of developing a spring academic seminar, and then we're developing a peer mentor program. We would want to assign peer mentors to the learning communities and the academic seminars, and the idea is to give our new students an upperclassman who can guide them and give them someone as a resource, right? Because it's much easier to ask a fellow 20-year-old college student a question than it is to ask an old English professor. So here's where we've been so far and where we're going. During the 16-17 academic year, we offered 15 learning communities. We had 308 students enrolled and 22 faculty involved. It's a wonderful experience. The students, we'll hear more from some undergraduate students who conducted research. The actual students enrolled seemed to see a value in this experience, and then the faculty enjoyed it as well. This past fall, or our current semester, we have 16 learning communities for 299 students enrolled and 27 faculty. So I think what's key to this program so far is that the faculty like it too, because it adds to some of the value they see in the work they do daily, and they enjoy collaborating with their colleagues. So these are some of the formats that we have used. The research shows that a single learning community is the ideal pairing. It's where we take a group of 20 students and register them in 2 courses. So for example, students might be registered in an English course and a political science course, and then those 2 faculty come up with assignments that give students the opportunity to see where studying writing intersects with studying politics. There's a lot of look at political rhetoric, for example, which can be very exciting for those of us who study it. We also have a model that we've had to use because sometimes we don't have enough faculty to have, pairings in the single format. So we do a multi where we'll take a higher volume course such as an intro or foundations of business course that usually has to have a cap of 60, and we'll take those 60 students and we'll distribute them into 3 English classes so that those students will still be in a 20 in a learning community between English and business, and then the business professor works with 2 or 3 English faculty to develop integrated curriculum. And then we've also had to do partial formats, where we just say, take a biology course that has 100 students in it, and 25 of those students will then also be registered in a college connections or an English course, and so it's only those 25 students who have the benefit of the learning community. This is what we've been able to do so far with learning communities. We are also this fall piloting a peer mentor program. I have 8 peer mentors that I'm working with, and they are assigned to learning communities, and I hope to have a really wonderful, amazing report to give you next year at this time on those peer mentors. We're also working on our pilot for our spring academic seminar. We're going to pilot about 8 or 9 academic seminars in the spring 18, and again, I'll report out on those. So as far as the learning communities, as was mentioned earlier, the first year experience is supposed to help us give students a better acclimation to college, right? To give them the skills they need to be successful, to help them make connections, and forge a connection not just to each other, but to MSU as a community. Well, we can look at numbers, right? Persistence. Numbers tell us one thing, but we also are lucky enough to have 2 undergraduate students who conducted research during the fall 16 semester to get a feel for what these learning communities meant to the students who were enrolled in them. So it is my honor to introduce Laura Surge and Francine Barron, who will present their research that they conducted under the guidance of Dr. Kim Acuna from the School of Education.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Laura Sorge, and this is my research partner. My name is Francine Barron. And last year, we conducted a year-long research project looking at students' perceived benefits of learning communities here at MSU, and we would like to share with you a few of our findings from that. So to begin, we'll take a look at how we actually conducted our research. So we started with a 47-question Likert model student survey that we administered to 5 of our learning community classes. And this explored both the academic and social benefits of learning communities. We had a total of 107 students answer our survey, giving us a 33.5% return rate. From there, we conducted observations in 2 classes, 3 times each. And with this, we utilized an observation protocol to make note of any sort of connections we saw between course content, student engagement, things of that nature. We also conducted 10 student interviews just to give us a more in-depth understanding of their experiences. And we also sent out a faculty survey to give us yet another perspective on learning communities. Now to take a look at some of our findings, we actually found that roughly 76% of our students were previously unaware of the course content, the relationship between the course content prior to taking these classes. However, after being in them only a few short weeks, they were able to make those connections. We also found that well over half of our students reported that they enjoyed working with their peers, felt comfortable doing so, and actually felt that it improved their academic performance.
We also had students report that they paid attention in class, they participated in class, and not only did they answer questions regularly, they also asked questions as well. 89% of faculty agreed that the students were more lively and energetic because they knew each other. Students understood the purpose of learning communities, they were satisfied with their implementation, and they looked forward to the learning community classes. So if you look here, we will see that 61% of the students understood the purpose of learning communities, 20% strongly agreed that they understood, 62 reported that they were satisfied, 22% strongly agreed that they were satisfied, and 63% agreed and 21% strongly agreed that they looked forward to those classes. While the students did not feel like the workload was lighter, because they were in learning communities, they did feel and they did understand that it was appropriate. Students were also able to make meaningful connections and build relationships with classmates. We had one student, we quoted one student as saying, "It's difficult to make friends in a new environment, and I've already made quite a couple that I'm going to see both in class and out of class." Scheduling, in terms of scheduling the two classes, because they have to be taken together, that was not an issue for the students. Students recognized that they were asked to use higher order thinking skills in learning community classwork. Students felt that professors were positive, they worked together, and they were more accessible to them because of the learning community. We quoted two students, and one said, "She's constantly looking for any way to help me." Another said, "Learning community professors tend to know what's going on in the other class, more so than the other teachers, so they plan around that as far as tests go." Students felt that the campus was providing them with academic and social support they might need to be more successful. One student said, we asked, "Why do you think that the university implemented learning communities?" And one student said, "Probably to help college kids adjust to the college lifestyle. And it's nice to know people you're going to see twice a week or twice a day in our case."
So perhaps our most exciting finding was that overall college experience was improved due to these learning communities. We had about 61% of our students strongly agree that their first year experience was improved because of these courses.
So to conclude, students in learning communities reported improved social relations, academic engagement, and a recognition of the effort of the university to help them be more successful. Professors found that students were more engaged and that the use of learning communities is a sustainable initiative which contains noticeable benefits. And this is all we have from our research. Thank you. And it was just a pleasure to find out what the students had to say about learning communities. It was kind of new to us, so it was great to see how we grew throughout our research. And thank you for the opportunity to present as well.
And just one more plug, these two have their findings published in the Journal of Higher
Education and Social Policy.
Education and Social Policy, sweet undergraduates. Published, isn't that exciting? So what questions can I answer about the first year experience?
Are we integrating, like, people from within that program that are senior or upper level with these freshmen that kind of facilitate that experience?
That's what the peer mentor program is supposed to do. Right now I have 8 undergraduate students. Some are seniors, some are juniors, and then 1 sophomore. And they are assigned to 2 learning communities currently and trying to help them. So for example, they created OrgSync accounts and reached out to all the students in the class. They let the students know that they're regularly available and say, "Hey, come meet me in the library." And so we're still working out what that role will mean and what those peer mentors will do, but that is what we're currently working to implement.
And so along with that, as freshmen come in, is there a requirement that they participate, or is it just an opportunity they can elect to or not?
Right now it has to be an opportunity because with the realities of implementing this at this time, we cannot require it because we can't offer enough learning communities for all of our incoming freshmen. We would like to, and I think that once we can build to the point where we have enough learning communities for all of our students, absolutely. I think it's, and really we probably won't even have to make it required because the offerings will just be natural for them to need those courses, and so they will just register with them.
Do you have any conflict or any problems with the 2 courses being scheduling at all?
Sometimes, yes. The biggest challenge we're facing is the way students enter college now. There's a lot of research from the coordinating board that shows just in Texas alone, students bring in lots of transfer credits. They do dual credit. They take classes at community colleges. So for us to anticipate what 2 courses every student might still need in the core, that is challenging. We have found some pairings that do not work. We have found some pairings that students love. English and political science, it's probably just my bias. I'm an English professor, seem to work really well. Most of the students need an English course. Most of them need political science, one of the courses. But we also have to work with our advisors. So we're working with the academic advising committee to help those academic counselors, give us information, give me information about what classes do you think students will want, what classes do they seem to need, how can we get them into those courses. So it's a fun logistical challenge.
And then is it a grading? Is the grading different? Or are they combined? Do the professors talk to decide?
Sometimes, yes.
What?
There are different kinds of assignments. So sometimes the assignment might be, for example, when I pair with political science, Dr. Linda Veazey might show a film in her class, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and discuss it from a political participation perspective. And then I might teach literary or film analysis in my class. And so they'll watch the film for her and answer questions for her. And so they look at the film through one lens for her class, but then look at that same film through another lens for mine. Or there are a lot of learning communities make use of a group project. And so the students will have a theme such as sustainability. This was another learning community. So the students looked at the issue of sustainability from a political perspective and a rhetorical perspective, and then did group projects about social activism. So there are different models for assignments that professors have used. In response to your question about the grading, sometimes it does, there is more grading. There's more prep for sure for these faculty. But what was really promising is that the faculty survey I conducted at the end of last year showed all of them wanted to do it again. All of them. So that's pretty amazing that they found the work worthwhile. And doing a prep once always takes more time. So some of them have done the same learning community a second time this year. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay, good.
Dr. Garrison, is this the first time we have tried that on this campus?
We have been doing learning communities since 2014, fall of 2014?
Around that.
Okay, so fall 2014 and fall 2015, we had about 5. And it was when the institution, I think something else that is neat to observe about their findings is that creating my position and my primary purpose is to create a first-year experience, at least right now, that has helped grow this program in a very short time. It is also interesting to note that there are some schools who have been working to implement learning communities for 16, 17, 18 years, and they're at 65% enrollment as far as how many of their freshmen can get in. So it's, I think we're doing really well for the amount of time we've devoted to it.
I'm interested to know why there's a small percentage of students from the research that indicated that they either didn't like it or strongly didn't like it. What are some of the reasons for that?
Well, some of the reasons is because sometimes the classes are actually harder because the assignments require more critical thinking. When you have to take your knowledge of one discipline and make it speak to another discipline, those assignments are more challenging. I had some students, I've taught 4 learning communities, and one thing that I'll observe as well is attendance is radically better than in a non-learning community course. But there's always 1 or maybe 2 students who cannot be passive, right? They cannot be passive learners. They cannot sit in the back. And those students tend to not like the learning community model. Does that answer?
Are you saying the opposite of what you just said? Are you saying that a passive student doesn't like it?
Correct.
Okay. It sounded like you were saying there are students who couldn't be passive and they didn't like it. You're saying students who are passive don't like it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. When a student
You need to be actively engaged.
Yes, they have to be actively engaged. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Garrison.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for the presentation to Ms. Barron and Ms. Sorge. This item is presented as a point of information only and no action is necessary. Item 18-21 is Financial Aid and Admissions Task Force Report and Admissions Criteria Recommendations. Dr. Garrison chaired this task force and will review with us their findings and recommendations. In your folder, you have a table that she will refer to during the discussion. Dr. Garrison.
Okay. The Financial Aid and Admissions Task Force, just to briefly recap our charge, Dr. Shipley asked us in September of 2016 to look at three areas of concern. One being our admissions categories, the second being how we package our financial aid overall, and third being the support we provide for underprepared students. The Financial Aid and Admissions Task Force members met several times over the course of the semester and looked at data from our own institution, data from peer institutions in Texas, COPLAC institutions. We looked at our own strategic plan to understand how we currently structure our admissions, what our requirements are compared to other schools, how we package our financial aid, but especially our academic scholarships, because that's where we have the most flexibility. And then finally, understanding when we're looking at support and structure needed for underprepared students, what were we already talking about doing in the strategic plan? Throughout the course of looking at this data, coming up with ideas, I went to Faculty Senate twice to talk with them about our findings. And I met with them in December and in March, vetted with them all the recommendations that I'm about to review with you, and fielded their questions and received their support. So we have met with Faculty Senate twice to talk with them about this. So our recommendations, for some of them we have already, they're already in place. The first is simply we decided to continue using the terms conditional and unconditional, those terms when we're communicating with parents and students, right, to indicate whether or not they met school criteria, and then whatever conditions were attached to their status. However, we found that part of the concerns that had arisen for Faculty Senate members had to do with our lack of tracking the different points at which students were admitted to the university. So we have since come up with 8 different tracking codes that will be applied to a student's admissions application, and will help us keep track of the persistence and graduation rates, progress toward degree, GPA of students depending on where or how they enter the university. So if a student enters in the top 10%, that student has one code. If a student is accepted because they meet our published test score requirements, that would be another code. Another would be ranking. If they don't meet our published requirements, but they have a 3.0 GPA, which is one of our admission by review conditions, then they would have another code. We don't have these in place right now, so it's really difficult to track exactly which students are struggling. So we have implemented those codes. They will be effective spring 18, so that we can begin tracking our students more effectively and know where we need to step in and help them a little bit more. With regard to student support, really we simply endorse many of the initiatives related to the strategic plan. We support wholeheartedly efforts to improve the advising experience for our students. We believe our students come to Midwestern State University because they see the benefits to coming to a smaller institution. At the risk of sounding terribly biased, our faculty mentor students tremendously, and it's one of our best strengths. And so to have an advising experience that begins, if not exactly with a faculty member, closely related to faculty with the professional advisors, we see that as a benefit to our students, and a sort of applauding of what we do best and what we do well. We also, task force, and I didn't have to twist their arms, I promise, implement the approved first year experience. It stood on its own merit, even though I brought chocolate. So the first year experience model, they feel that the research behind the model that we have is strong enough, and that we should continue to implement it and to focus on supporting our students, getting them acclimated that first year, and then also to create the centralized tutoring center. The tutoring center opened on Wednesday, September 6th. We have 15 tutors, I believe. It's open 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and they have already had approximately 300 sessions. So it is being utilized, and we've just gotten started, which is very exciting. So those are recommendations that really we've been able to implement pretty easily. In progress, we are looking more carefully, as I mentioned, at those different admissions categories, and more recommendations may come, but we need to see where our students end up depending on where they enter. We are recommending that we increase our academic scholarship renewal requirements. Currently, a freshman can have a scholarship renewed with a 1.7 cumulative GPA and a sophomore with a 2.0. We are recommending that those be raised to a 2.5 and a 3.0 to receive an academic scholarship renewal. We are also going to continue looking at the actual academic scholarship, the requirements to get one, and the amounts attached to each one, because we think we could use our scholarship money to leverage a specific kind of student who we think is a good fit for MSU, a solid student who wants to be involved and likes the campus culture. We are also going to evaluate the curriculum of our first year seminar. So students who are admitted conditionally have to take a course called College Connections. We are looking very carefully at the curriculum, the retention, the performance of students who take that class, and then we're also going to look at the curriculum and effectiveness of Skills for Success. That is being conducted this academic year by Ashley Hurst, who is the Director of Tutoring and Academic Support Programs, and then we plan to make whatever recommendations, or revisions to those courses as needed for the next academic year. So those are in progress. The one recommendation that is pending, and I'm bringing it to you for discussion, the task force would like to expand our automatic admissions to include the top 25%. And the chart in your folder provides some information and from some data that prompted the task force to make this recommendation. So I'm looking at this table. When we started comparing or just looking at what our peer institutions do, we found some interesting patterns. And one first that I'd like to point out is that 4 institutions considered our peers, and by that we mean when students express interest in MSU, they also express interest in these institutions. This is information gleaned from admissions. Sam Houston, Tarleton, UT Arlington, and West Texas A&M all admit the top 25. I'd also like to point out that of the other institutions that do not admit the top 25, only Texas Tech has an entry ACT score higher than ours. So to the question of whether or not we might be discouraging some really great students from applying to our school, I think the task force believes that we are. And that those students see automatic admission to Sam Houston, Tarleton, UTA, and West Texas as the path of least resistance, and Angelo State, Stephen F. Austin, and UNT as the second next path. That's how the task force interpreted this information. A concern, however, is what does it mean to admit the top 25 and to expand our automatic admissions. So in the top row that represents MSU, we looked at our retention. For our institution, we were able to break it down. We had an overall 69.8 retention, and this was taken from Coordinating Board's institutional resume for 2016. So we had a 69.8 overall retention. The retention of our top 10% was 91%, and the retention of our 11 to 25% was 81%. And that matches the average for the past 5 years. It has been steadily at 80, 81%. And even for our persistence from second to third year, it's well over 10 percentage points higher than our institutional average. So that 11 to 25%, those students that we do get, they stay for more than just that first to second year. They're staying with us. So that tells us that there is not a terrific risk in expanding our admissions to include the top 25%. We also looked at graduation rates. The graduation rates of those institutions that expanded to the top 25%, you'll look, Sam Houston's is 10%, 10 percentage points higher than ours in both the 4-year and 6-year. Tarleton State is, 7, and the 6-year is probably equivalent. UTA's 4-year is equivalent, but their 6-year is 6 points higher. So, we're not trying to suggest there's a cause effect, but there is certainly a correlation that we could infer, and I think it's what it said to us as a task force was that it made common sense to us to say to the top 25%, come to school here, and there doesn't seem to be a risk in admitting those students. These are our recommendations to President Shipley and the Board of Regents. Do you have any questions?
And what I want to follow up and say is that, as Kristen and Dr. Garrison has said, this went to the Senate twice. It's been in front of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is recommending to you that the action requiring board approval, as shown in the board book, receive your approval.
On Tarleton State, hasn't their enrollment just really skyrocketed over the past few years?
Yes, I don't have the number, but it has.
Okay. So they're doing something right.
And I could
getting
get you that
kids in.
information.
Well, I think we've seen it somewhere.
Yeah, but Tarleton and Angelo State are doing a lot of dual enrollment, and we are not doing dual enrollment.
Okay.
So Tarleton and Angelo are in the high schools, and we've chosen not to do that.
And Tarleton also has their Fort Worth campus, which is about 10 years old now and has significantly increased their enrollment, as we hope Flower Mound will for us.
Right, it's not in Stephenville, but by being in multiple campuses, they've increased, but the whole dual enrollment thing is not going to be mirrored in anything we do.
I have two observations, Dr. Garrison. One is we had a fairly heated debate about this, if I remember right, a year or two ago. And some of us were in favor fairly strongly of leaving it at 10, just so it didn't appear we were dropping our standards, and it appears maybe we were wrong. I don't know. But one observation on this list would be the toughest school to get in, it appears, for the 15 incremental percent is Tech. Yet they have the highest across-the-board retention and graduation rates. And I would guess that's not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on that?
The relationship between them having the highest entrance and then the highest.
The most difficult, or
Right.
the highest admission standard and the highest graduation and retention rate.
They draw from a different cohort than we do. They're an R1. They have a different appeal. And something that the task force grappled with was, who are we as an institution? And we think we draw a different kind of student, and we think we should let those students know we want them.
So describe the type of student Midwestern
Okay,
draws.
I forget
Briefly.
what I said. Yes. So what we decided is that the students who are drawn to MSU are well-rounded students. We don't, and I've been teaching here since 2003. The students who come here are not for the most part, this is a generalization, but they're not put the blinders on, all I care about is school because I am going to go to this law school or this med school. The students who come here want to do really well in school, but they also want to get leadership opportunities, they want to be involved, and so school is important, but so is community involvement. And so they might not be the 4.0 or 4.5 with the 32 ACT. And on the task force, we agree that we're okay with that because we really like the students. The students we end up working with as faculty, we like those kinds of students. They work hard at school, they get A's and B's, and then they want to do things like work in my writing center or go to Model UN or do independent research and present at conferences. They want to do Eureka. So we want those students. We want them to know that this is a really great place for them.
Well, in addition to that, if this does go through, as it appears you have really done your homework and prepared very well here, but that we have programs in place that will make them succeed.
Right.
Yes.
That's
And
the combo.
so it appears that that's also happening.
Yes.
That's what we just presented. It's
Yes.
all the same thing.
Yes. And I think that drawing more students in that cohort will actually allow us to be more successful in reaching the students who aren't prepared. And so that we can really tailor our support to them.
So if we do this, how do we let those students know? How do they get that information if this were to happen?
That would be, I have no doubt that our admissions director and admissions team would be ready to roll. They would be recruiting, they would be letting students know. It would be a robust PR movement. Yeah.
Before we discuss this further, could I have a motion to discuss it? Then we can discuss it more, but I'd like to get the motion on the table first to discuss the specifics of this. Is there a motion to approve the change in the admissions criteria?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there other questions?
I have one question. And just going back to the advising experience, because I do know as a student and a graduating one in a couple of weeks, that advising does make a very big difference in your experience here. My question is, how do you plan to assess if our advising experience is actually getting better? It's okay, I guess, to ask if it's going okay, but are there numbers, are there quantifying things that we're going to use to see if we're getting better?
Okay, so yes, however, what we're doing this year, Ashley Hurst, again, the director of TASK, she is the chair of the academic advising committee, which is comprised of all the academic counselors, so all the counselors who were assigned to the different colleges. They are currently putting together, because this is a change in model, we have to create an advising manual that reflects the new, I guess, workflow, the new pattern for students. So they are working to put together that workflow. We have a meeting at the beginning of next month to finalize some of those. So first we have to create the documents. And then once we create those documents, then we can start to assess how effective that workflow works. So for example, all of these, we'll be plotting from admissions to advising for new students. Did an academic counselor reach out to you? How many times were you contacted? From the advising perspective, we can look within each college, and deans are involved now, and faculty and chairs are involved now. So they can help us monitor, where did your majors go, right? What happened to your majors? When did they get handed off? So before we can actually assess, we have to have the procedures in place, and those are in development right now. And then we'll come up with student learning outcomes, and that will be part of our new WEAVE report for TASK. So we won't have that data for another year, but we will have it. Does that answer your question? Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Pearson, that will be go forward only, it won't be retroactive to students are already here.
It would have to be effective fall 2019. Fall 2019 would be the first semester that we could implement it, and it depends on if the board approves, how quickly we can implement it, I guess, at the admissions level. So that's more of an admissions.
You're saying if we approve this, the earliest it could be done is fall of 2019?
No, yes. Dr.
Want me to take that?
Yes.
So, no, you're good, cast it next year.
Yes.
So yes, if this is approved, we are already recruiting and admitting for the fall of 18, which would require, a republishing of all the pieces, going back and changing criteria to those which we've already judged in a way. And so typically what we would do is start this clean with a new recruiting cycle, which would be next summer. So if approved today, we could begin the systems change over the summer to recruit for the fall of 19.
Well, I accept that, but to me, if it's good to change it, we ought to do it as soon as we can, which would be, to me, next year rather than the following year. I understand
we can.
the problems.
The answer is we can do that. We would need to go back and look at applications that were possibly denied and reevaluate those. We would need to reprint all of our pieces.
We're already denying people for
next
year.
Yes.
Yeah, but why couldn't you just, anyone who applies once this decision is made, will be reviewed in that way. Why do you have to go back and review anybody?
We can do that, and we've actually talked internally
That
about
would be
doing.
a lot simpler, and it would still make an impact.
We can, and we would do that internally. I think I guess what I'm trying to address is, the students that aren't looking at us because of our standards, we would want to redo all of our materials that we have and get it back.
I don't know that we have the staff to go back and review all the applications we've already handled.
Right.
So I think that's an unfair thing to ask of the staff that we have, and it could negatively impact enrollment. But if we have approved a standard, we can put it out immediately for further consideration. We just won't be able to get it out informationally unless somebody's looking at our website.
Is there a large number that we've already approved for the fall of 18?
Yes, there is.
But if a student saw that the criteria had changed, they could reapply?
They could, and we could come up internally. I mean, I could obviously work with admissions and try to figure out something that is not too intrusive, if that's possible, on their staff, because they are limited in staff, and it's already a bottleneck in a ways. But yes, we could update that on the website. We could redo print pieces and things like that.
Well, isn't this if we implemented this, isn't that gonna reduce the volume of work that admission people have to do?
It could, in theory, absolutely, with the top 25%.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Dr. Garrison, my school doesn't rank, and I thought the trend was for schools not to rank because it was discriminatory and was implied to be that way. Is that a trend that's happening? And then let me have a follow-up question so you'll see where I'm going with this. Why wouldn't we just change the SAT, ACT standards to fit what we're accepting rather than just the 25%? And then my third comment is an apology to Dr. Lamb, who presented this 2 years ago, and I voted against it. And I don't think I appreciated the magnitude of your problem. The students coming from high schools are having a difficult time meeting the standards of a college because of our high school education, and you have a very tough road. And so I apologize, I didn't appreciate your problem 2 years ago.
Thank you. No need to apologize. I did not do my due diligence.
No, you did. You did.
That was my.
No, you did, and I just didn't appreciate the problem.
I think, since you're not an expert on admissions, could I jump in on this because you're about retention? I think that we may feel pretty strongly in the admissions community that test scores can be less reliable than performance, and we believe that the standing within the class shows how well the student performed rather than just how much they knew, they could show they knew on a standardized test.
That's absolutely right. They're a class rank, and it's still widely used. There are a few schools, especially some of the privates, that aren't, but it's still widely used.
And for a place like us.
It is class rank is a much better predictor of college performance and success than standardized scores, which we know increasingly we're learning about the socioeconomic bias of the standardized test.
Dr. Lamb, if I recall correctly, the last time we had this conversation, it was wrapped around COPLAC as well. Because when we looked at advancing our standards, it was really like to come in line with the COPLAC schools that we find as our kind of comrades. And now we're saying, really for all intents and purposes, we're looking at our Texas base instead of our COPLAC base, or am I off here?
No, I think we can look at COPLAC, and I'll go do that, but as a COPLAC expert, I've been doing this for 12 years, I think there are multiple parts of an equation that make you a COPLAC school. And to me, if we could come even with the percentage of residential students, and we're at 30%, we're a whole different animal than some of those COPLACs who have a 50% residential population. And so I will be happy to look at admission standards, but I think there are multiple things we can achieve that make us a COPLAC school that have nothing to do with admission students. But I'll go look at them. That'll be easy.
We did collect information on COPLAC and their admission requirements. I'll send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I want to make a comment. I appreciate all the work you and the task force did in gathering all the information and really looking internally as to what some of those barriers were. And to me, one of the biggest strengths of this is that you have the faculty support. I mean, for the faculty senate to say, we agree with this, I mean, I think that speaks volumes. So, thank you.
Are there other questions? We have a motion and a second then. All in favor?
Wait a minute, I want to know what we're voting for.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Because the motion says that this policy will begin with the fall 2019 class. So we're going to remove that, just so long, yeah, immediately. I don't know.
I mean, that's fine. We'll figure it out, I think.
What does that mean?
Every effort will be made for this to begin
We will
immediately.
make
It could begin as soon
It
as
could begin as
fall.
soon as
Immediately. Right.
No, it could begin immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
We could just change to say that the change to admissions policies is approved.
And then
be
let you
silent
figure it
about
out.
a date, and you'll just do it.
It doesn't have a date in it now, does it?
Yes,
does.
it has fall 2019.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So
Take that date out.
who made the motion? Is that
Shelley?
acceptable to you?
Yes.
And the
And
second?
Nancy.
All right. So we're going to revise it to implement it when, how, what does the wording say?
Just approving. We are approving change to the MSU admissions policies as presented with no date.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Sean, are you online?
Yeah. Aye.
Okay. All opposed, the motion carries. Item 18-22 is the low-producing degree programs. The board book provides information regarding the coordinating board's review of academic programs to ensure they produce an adequate number of graduates. Dr. Johnston, would you please review this item and explain the administration's recommendations?
Yes, thank you. The coordinating board notifies of low-producing programs, which Chairman Sanchez received that. These happen to be within the West College of Education. Dr. Capps worked with his faculty to come up with solutions, and that's what's being presented. Basically, you have within existing degrees a change to a concentration, a certificate, or a minor. But what we're doing is preserving these admittedly low but critically important areas and concentrations within these degrees. We sent that preliminarily to the coordinating board. They were receptive to this approach pending the board's approval.
Before we have a discussion, could I have a motion to approve these degree program changes as presented?
So
Could I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right, well then we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Not as short as it sometimes has been.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons. They were all very important. All right, now the Finance Committee, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee will now come to order. Members of the committee here today are Mr. Ayers, Mr. Trosno, and Dr. Gibbons. Our first item of business is 18-23, the approval of August minutes, August 3rd, 17 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, may stand approved as presented. Item 18-24, summaries of financial support and the comprehensive campaign update. Before I ask Tony to review these reports, I'd like to highlight some of the gifts received since our last meeting. The Thacker family contributed a very generous $125,000 for the expansion of the Exam Thacker Fantasy of Life workshop, as Kyle, I believe, presented earlier. Fairway Outdoor Advertising is an MSU athletic corporate sponsor for fiscal year 18, and they contributed advertising valued at $30,000. Al Gwynn donated $20,000 to the MSU Annual Fund for the Lane Gwynn Challenge to match new and lapsed donors. Wayne Reed contributed $15,000 in gift in-kind services of advertising from KJTL Fox 18 and KFDX TV. And the MSU cycling team received $10,000 from the Howard and Hale 100. The support from foundations, our community, alumni, and friends continues to be outstanding. And Tony, if you would, this time please review these reports.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I'm going to reference we're not gonna look at all these reports, but I do want to take us back, in a sense to what Mr. Williams talked a little bit on athletics. I know some of you were at the football game, I saw you, and I know Dr. Shipley and I were sitting with the Gray's family, and after we took our hearts out of our kneecaps at the end of that overtime win, we were on 8-0 and going to 9-0. We have a 20-0 soccer team going for 21-0. And when you look at that, what that takes is it takes strategy, it takes leadership, it takes vision, and it takes an execution plan. In a sense, a comprehensive campaign's like a team doing that. It is an 84-month campaign, and I'm proud to say that we are sustaining that momentum. So the best thing about being 8-0 is you can be 9-0, and the best thing about that I can come to you now is say we're still having the momentum going. Takes a great quarterback too, and Dr. Shipley stays very involved. I'm the envy of many of my fellow colleagues, and they'll say something like development officers talk to each other and they'll say, is your president good with the donors or good with the process? I say, I got both, and that's really true. So appreciate Dr. Shipley's involvement and that. Let's look at a couple highlights as we look at that. I'm also glad to note that you have on your desk, you should have a copy of the campaign case statement. You heard us talk a lot about that, and please feel free to review that and enjoy the strategy behind it, the pillars of the campaign, and the beautiful campus that we have here at Midwestern. One of those things that we'll look at, first of all, is the comprehensive campaign comparison of new gifts and commitments. Your first report, the thing about this report too, is that you're looking at, when it says fiscal year 18, notice that is only through September 30th, the first month of this. But the bottom line is we're in $50 million campaign. If you look at through September 30th, 2017, we've been blessed to raise $9,978,348. Now, if you look at that versus elapsed time, which is another metric we've talked about before, that's 13/84 of our campaign. That's 15.47% of our time, and we're ahead of that, raising 19.96% of the goal attained. It doesn't always work like that, but we're happy that we're seeing that progress. I also want to say, if you see down in the bar graph, fiscal year 18, you see some blue. You see a color blue. Blue is good, and I wore blue to emphasize that. Blue represents bequest intentions, and under the leadership of our Assistant Vice President, Rhonda McClung, we've been able to see for the first time in fiscal year 18, over $500,000 of documented planned gifts. And actually, we'll be looking at a report real shortly that gives a little more on that. So that's kind of the overall picture. I want to highlight also, when we turn to fiscal year 17, turn 2 reports, you'll see, how do we finish up fiscal year 17, you may be asking. The monthly comparison of new gifts and commitments. Our goal was $5.5 million in new gifts and commitments. That does include pledges. We attained $6.792 million, and that's about 123.5% of the goal. Again, nice trend, and grateful to see that. Next report shows just the comparison of cash and grants wrap up for fiscal year 17. The goal was $4.4 million, and we came in finishing at $4.729 million, 107% of goal. Some momentum there. The next pie chart you see looks at the sources of the gifts, and one of those things, again, we've talked about it, Dr. Shipley's mentioned it, and we are it's really a great thing to see the support of our foundations, and we're blessed in this community to have some very strong philanthropic foundations. Some are large, some are small. Many of them really involved. And you can see that green portion, the 68% of our gifts for that fiscal year. If you turn the next one, now we're turning into, we're in our second year of our fiscal year. Our campaign's actually progressing. So we've got fiscal year 18, again, through September 30th, the first complete month, you'll see 3,185,676. Very large academic grant license gift came in for the Kimball School of Geoscience. And this again shows the teamwork. The academic sector, and under leadership of Dr. Shipley and Dr. Johnston, continues to bring money in. I mean, Dr. Scott Meadow worked on that, And honestly, if we didn't have Dr. Scott Meadow, we wouldn't have that gift. And this is licenses that we need to attract our students to the Kimball School of Geosciences. We won't talk about it for sake of time. I know it's a long meeting, but College of Science and Mathematics, someday I'll share with you the statistics of the grants they've gone in. Really impressive. So that's kind of where we sit towards a $7 million goal. So we're about 46%. Does that mean we're going to rest and sit there? Okay, we're going to coast? No, I don't think my boss will allow us to do that. And you can see the cash and grants on the next one. If you look at fiscal year 18, the last chart on the pie chart, before we look at the plan giving, you could see this fiscal year 18 compared to last has a little bit more corporate gifts so far. Again, very early, 1 month into it, so too hard to tell. But the foundations are still 28% of that. The last report you have is the 1922 Legacy Society. Now, Legacy Society is a society that we kind of had, but really until Rhonda McClung came on board, it really was, no one knew they were even in it. The Legacy Society is to, that's not good, is it? It's to acknowledge people who have documented in writing planned gifts that go to Midwestern State University. They could be at any age. The gift doesn't have to be any amount. But this is when they're documented. So Rhonda, really one of the first things she did was sit down and look at all these records we have and try to sit down with people who we believe we were in their will or somehow there's some correspondence. And you could see that has worked real well. And those are acknowledged people that we have in the Legacy Society. It involves a lot of discussions that Rhonda's had with people, really getting out there and kind of feet hitting the pavement. And some of them are even anonymous. But the total value of those 9 gifts that we've been able to, again, this is documented, this isn't just verbal, is $1,838,162. Campaign value, now I'm not going to go into all for sake of time, but CASE and other trade associations and our national associations want us to count gifts a certain way. And bottom line is, if someone's young and they give you a planned gift, you probably should discount it because a lot of things can happen in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we use a prorated derivative and a ratio on that. And the discounted value, according to best practices, is $570,000. That's that blue that goes back to that report showing the best request intentions. When we still have 6 gifts as of September 30th that are documenting pending, and there's a lot of work that goes in plan giving, and Rhonda takes a lot of time in that. And we're appreciative to have her. So that's the question, that's the reports. The other thing that I want to do is go back to, and we looked at Board of Regents giving. Again, one of those things that Dr. Shipley's asked us to do is go, not just with you as the Board of Regents, but going with all of our Alumni Association board, our cabinet. We need to be all in the campaign, and that's an expectation. Again, the things that Mr. Hessings talked about last August was we would like and appreciate your consideration of you as a board member give whatever your amount you want to in whatever area you want to. There's a lot of areas in Midwestern, and we're excited about that. And one of those things that we are doing as we move into eventually the second and third years of the campaign. You want to have those boards all in a sense. So by the end of this academic year, it would be Dr. Shipley's recommendation that we try to move towards our board involvement on that. And you'll hear some more of that as we go forward and look for some more information as we round towards the end of the year on that. Mr. Hessing, are you there? We're going to let you talk more than just now. I know, Sean, that you perhaps we're going to share a little bit too about your perspective on the board giving.
Well, so I've mentioned to the board last board meeting my feelings on 100% participation. I think you just heard Tony reiterate that. I think it's really, really important when you have a campaign like this, absolutely imperative actually. You have a campaign like this, that board participation that is at 100%. So, as Tony indicated, we'll be sending out something here in the next 30 to 45 days towards the latter part of this year, giving you a little more information, giving you an opportunity to fill that out and send it in so that Stan can use that in her campaign. So that's about all I need to say about that, and I will probably follow up at the next board meeting. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hessing. And so I wanted to, that concludes, my report, and I entertain any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Or Dr. Shipley, were you
I
gonna
would
say
just like to suggest that every month, Rhonda, you come up with $2 million for us.
We're gonna get even higher next month, but then it slows down a little bit.
Not bad for your first month.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tony. And as a reminder, your folder contains a list of donors and note cards. Please write thank you notes to those assigned to you. Any others you'd like to include. These notes are well received, and thank you for taking time to personalize those. Item 18-25, quasi-endowment funds reports for fiscal year 17. And Dr. Fillet, if you could give the year-end reports for the Redline Fund, Frank and Nancy Harvey Student Development Fund, which are included in the board book, or answer questions if necessary. Going once. Twice. Marilyn, you've never had an easier.
I think everybody's trying to get through this really fast.
Yeah.
We're kind of running late, so
Right.
that's fine.
This was presented only as a point of information, no actions needed. Item 18-26, financial reports. Administration recommends acceptance of the July 17th financial reports as previously distributed. And Marilyn's off the hook this time. She will provide preliminary information regarding the fiscal year 17 year-end report.
So I know our time's pretty precious. The AFR, the annual financial report, Chris is finishing up, and so we'll probably get it to you within the next week or so. But this is just a summary, and you've seen this presentation before, so I've updated it with this year's numbers. And it's a trend analysis, so you can kind of see where we are year to year on certain financial indicators. So net income, when I go through, I'm gonna do like your income statement, and then I'll do the balance sheet. We don't call them that in public finance, but public accounting, but for your business types, that's what you'd recognize. So net income, you can see we spent down in 15 on some of the restricted funds, and now in 16 and 17, we're closely matching our revenue to our expenditures. On this is a very busy chart, but your net tuition and fees is the blue line at the top, and you can see that's kind of steadily grown over time. And the state appropriations, while it looks like we've got a nice big bump, that's the tuition revenue bond funding. So if you took that out, we'd be flat or even maybe dropping a little bit. Sales and services is the red line, and that's your housing, board plan. So as we get more and more students on campus, you would expect that number to go up. Grants have been steady over the years. And then you've got two that are kind of up and down. Gifts, the big jump in 14 was that software. There was an $8 million gift in kind for geosciences. And then we've kind of dropped back down to kind of the standard level. Gains and losses, again, 14 was a good year for us. 15, we did some losses. And now we're back up on the positive side. The rest of those are pretty stable. So. For on the expense side, I broke out payroll because it's pretty much almost half of our expenditures. So the scale on it would just overwhelm everything else. But as you can see, our salary and wages have kind of gone up over time in the last few years as we've been trying to do pay raises for folks. The payroll-related cost is your insurance and FICA and all those other kinds of benefits. Although the lines look like they go together because of the scale, salary and wages over the last 9 years gone up 40%, whereas the payroll-related's gone up 88%. So as a they're not really correlated. The payroll related is going up much faster, obviously, than the wages.
They include health insurance.
That's the health insurance, and it's retiree health insurance. So we've got folks, if you're here 10 years, you're eligible for the retiree. So we've had people that left years ago and now are coming back and are eligible and claiming our health insurance as a retiree. Yes.
Do they have to be a certain age or just?
Yes.
Just have 10
yes.
years?
Yes. They could just have to have the 10 years though, but they could have left and now they're coming back. They're saying, you know, I want to claim my insurance. And these are the other expenses. The black line at the top you can see is depreciation. Remain pretty steady over the years. In 14, that's when we had that software package, and so we depreciated that over 3 years. And now we kind of stayed at the high level because we've got Legacy Hall coming on and some other things that's going to increase your depreciation and keep it at that high level.
So Marilyn, may I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. Is that high increase in depreciation bad or good or doesn't matter?
Well, depreciation is going to be, will parallel your assets.
So that's why you see
assets
increase.
you have, the more you're going to be depreciating.
Okay.
Your capital equipment, furniture, those are usually depreciated quicker. Your buildings depreciate slower, so they won't be as big. But obviously the scale of buildings are, right, you know, 10, 20, 50, $100 million versus a few $1 million.
So this would include all of our new buildings, our athletic fields, everything. So
right.
because
so that's why it's
adding assets.
Right, so at 14, we had the jump because of the software, but now it stayed high because of Legacy and the fields and all those other things.
Thank you.
Yeah. The top blue line, as you can see, our scholarships and grants have steadily gone up over time as we've tried to invest in our scholarship and grant programs for our students. Materials and supplies, that jump is for the board plan. As we added a lot of people into Legacy, the board plan is classified under materials and supplies. So that's, we pay our contractor that provides our food to our students. So that's a payment to them. Professional fees and services, those, as we opened up Legacy, that's our internet service provider cable. We bundled that into a contract, and so that's gone up for that. Let me see what else. The repairs and maintenance, again, that's remained pretty steady over time. The big jump in 14 was when we had the hail damage on the roof. So that was a $1.7 million project. The other ones are pretty made steady. So, okay. Now we'll get into the balance sheet. So the balance sheet, you've got assets made up of a couple different classes, and then we'll go to look at the liabilities and net income, the difference between the assets and the liabilities. So on the financial asset, you can see our investments. Right here is where we've invested our cash at A&M. So our cash went down that we keep overnight, and it went up, and it's now classified as an investment. So, so that's the switch. And then the big jump was with the Legacy Hall money. We invested that, and as we spent it down, and now we've invested the TRB money. So that's those jumps. So as we spend the TRB money at the end of next year, you'll expect to see that line come back down. Unless we're really successful in our gift raising. We can invest that.
Or unless we delay the building of the HSHS another couple of years.
Yeah, we'll keep it up here. So those are our financial assets. Pretty standard. I mean, there's no big surprises other than those changes that you just talked about. Okay, our physical assets, that's your answer on your depreciation. Your capital assets have continued to kind of slowly go down. Your intangible assets, that's that software package. So that's that big jump, and now it's gone down because it's depreciated. Construction in progress is the red line, and that's kind of up and down as we do construction. And then land has remained pretty steady. Buildings and infrastructure, because the scale is so much bigger than everything else, it's on its own sheet. And as you can see, when Legacy came on, and now it's kind of remained flat. So as we add the buildings for the TRB, you're going to see that jumping up. Current liabilities, deferred revenues, that's where the students pay their bills in August, but they really haven't we haven't earned that revenue because they haven't started classes yet. So that's considered deferred revenue. We really haven't earned that money, but we've received it in cash. And then other liabilities are pretty flat, and accounts payable, we've been doing very well in our accounts payable. A little bit of a drop, I think, is because we finished up our construction project, so we don't have as much in accounts payable this last year. Non-current liabilities, those are your bonds. So that's our big debt. And as you can see, as we did legacy, we issued a bond, and now we've done another bond issuance with So the net between the two, assets and liabilities, is going to be your net assets. And as you can see, we did pretty well in 14, and a lot of that was because of that gain we had, the investment gains. And so we kind of narrowed it a little bit, but we're still pretty good on our net assets, as you'll see on the next sheet. So your net position, again, capital assets, you really can't spend. It's the net between that capital asset less any liability against it. So it's been decreasing over time because of depreciation. Restricted funds, we've spent down a little bit, and then our unrestricted's actually gone up, which is a good thing. Unrestricted net position is your net assets are your flexible monies. So that's what you want to see. We want to see that number steady or even going up. So in summary, I'm not going to read all this, but basically we're doing very well, and we haven't changed too much from last year. Any changes are very explainable, but you know, if we continue investing in our capital assets, that'll help us cover our depreciation. So again, we've remained steady from last year. So it's pretty positive report to you all today. Okay, any questions? And then please let us know once you get the AFR. Chris does a really good job of writing up a lot of discussion and analysis, and so this will be so much easier to understand because it's just so full of information. It may be a little overwhelming for some of you, unless Jeff or you financial types, you probably eat it up. Okay. All right.
Any questions for Marilyn on the July year-end report? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the July financial report as presented? So moved. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. 1827 investment report. Administration recommends acceptance of the fourth quarter fiscal year 17 report. Dr. Tollay's summary report is in the board book. Anybody have any questions on the investment report? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept the investment report?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Easier for me to say. Okay, 18-28 investment policy changes for legislative changes. The administration recommends changes to the investment policy. It's shown in the board book. Dr. White, please present this item for consideration.
Okay, after every session, I'm required by statute to review with you the changes that the legislature's made that we have to then incorporate in our investment policy. There weren't any changes for our endowment policy or endowed funds. This is operating funds, so this is our cash funds. So the housekeeping that you'll see is just changing my title throughout from Business Affairs and Finance to Administration and Finance. The first change was HB 1004, and it's required that endowments, if you want to be able to invest your funds, you have to have endowments above 95 million, and they changed it to 150 million. But since we've got funds invested at A&M, the way they are investing those funds is fine because they have $1 billion endowment. So they're good. Because we have funds ourselves, we keep local cash, then we've got to follow the Texas Public Funds Investment Act for the funds we use. But A&M, they can invest it differently. So I'm just letting you know that, but it doesn't really change anything we're doing. If you go to G1G, they've allowed interest-bearing bank accounts may be insured by the FDIC or the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund. So it made that change. G1L, ultra-short bond funds with a duration of less than 1 year and whose investments are limited to investment-grade securities are now permitted. And then in HB 1701, item E2 was changed. In the past, any person offering to engage in investment transactions for us was required to be supplied with a copy of our investment policy and sign a certification. This is now changed to any business organization and provides the definition of the business entity as an investment tool or an investment management firm operating with discretion. And then finally, we've got HB 2928. That would cover G1A and F. And they changed authorized investments to include obligations of the federal loan banks. And then we've got a typo on 1J, and then a correction. The numbering that you've got in here right now needs to be fixed. Item G1L, there's two in your copy, so we'll have to fix that. It's not marked, but we'll have to fix it. So, any questions?
It looks like the only real change in our allowable investments is that we can add Federal Home Loan Bank. I don't know why.
Yeah,
That wasn't already considered.
yeah, National Credit Union Share Insurance
right.
Fund. Yeah.
Right.
And then the ultra short bond funds. You can do. Okay.
Here are questions for Marilyn on investment policy. Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept these changes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 18-29, salary title position changes in the fiscal year 17 budget. Reports of personnel changes in July and August are presented for information only. The list of salary title and position changes is presented for application. As you can see, 2 staff positions were filled above and below the budgeted amount. The assistant VP for gift planning and development was added through private donations. That position was reclassified and title changed. Any questions regarding these changes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to ratify the changes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 18-30, same report for fiscal year 18. This report is presented for information only. However, the list of salary, title, and position changes is presented for applications. 11 positions were filled above and below the budgeted amounts. The faculty position was changed from 9 to 11 months, and funding for faculty promotion was added to the budget. Any questions regarding this report? Hearing none, can I have a motion to ratify personnel changes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 18-31, approval of new positions, enrollment management. The administration requests authorization to add a VP for enrollment management position and assistant during the fiscal 18 year. This specific request is shown in the board book. Dr. Shipley, would you please comment on this addition?
Thank you. I've had a chance to visit with most of you about my belief that it's time for us to add a vice presidential position. I think you may have seen on the dashboard how our administrative costs had gone down. This will put them probably about where they were when I came in. We had tried to reduce them. But I think everything you've heard today could lead you to understand why we need an expert in enrollment management if we're going to grow like our sister institutions are growing. So the cost put forward in your board book would cover the costs we would assume this year that were not in the budget we brought to you, and then we would absorb those in the next year's budget. So I heartily encourage you to accept, to approve the new position for a Vice President for Enrollment Management.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Shepard regarding this? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve this recommendation as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I think. Did you vote for it, Kevin? Okay. Item 18-32 is Maryland makes her way back up here, a budget adjustment for international recruitment fee. In May, the board authorized this fee, but was not included in the fiscal year 18 budget. The administration is recommending an increase in the fiscal year 18 revenue and expense budgets of $400,000 to reflect this new fee and related expenditures. Dr. Flay, please comment on that.
Sure. We have reached out in various international areas, and the agents from those areas are charging much higher than our current. So in May, you approved like a pass-through fee that we could charge the students, and then we would pay the agents versus the student paying the agent directly. And sometimes there's problems there. So that's the way we would handle it, is they would pay us, and then we turn around and pay the agent. So you approved that, but we really didn't know how many of these new type of students we would be getting, and now we have a better handle on it, and so about $400,000 this year is what we'll be paying out to those agents. So we'll have a revenue budget and an expense budget to match. It's just an in and out.
The revenue will come from?
The students will pay it,
Oh,
and we
okay.
turn around and pay the agents.
Okay.
So what is a typical fee, a recruitment fee?
Let Keith answer this one.
The fee depends on the market, and so when we proposed this in May, it was different depending on the economy of the market from where the students are coming. So for this year, for example, we did better in China than we thought we would, and that is about a $9,500 fee that the students are paying to us that is being passed through. But again, in their economy, that is generally affordable and the market rate. In other economies, it may be less. Like India may be quite a bit less, but it'll be different depending on where the student's coming from.
And these are recruiters that work that country for many different universities?
Yes, generally they are, absolutely.
They're agents, but they help them with their paperwork and all the questions they have coming to a different country. So not only they recruit, but they really kind of handle those students.
What criteria guides our fee then that we charge?
It's negotiated through we contract with a third party that represents the agents so that the university does not have direct contracts with the agents, and the third party negotiates that with the agents.
Are there any discriminatory issues here that might confront us?
I'm not sure I fully understand.
That we might charge certain nationalities more than another nationality? Would that be perceived in any way as discriminatory?
No, I actually thought about this when we before we proposed this in May, and I don't think so for a couple of reasons. One is it's depending on the economy from which the students come, their means are different. And we already do participate in differential tuition pricing for international students. We have 3 different levels of tuition that they can pay at Midwestern, with pure non-resident tier 2 and then in-state via waiver. So we're already participating in some differential tuition.
Keith, would you mention though why you initially came to us and asked us to do this?
Absolutely. So we initially came in and asked for the pass-through fee. What we are seeing is with the agent model and these agents representing multiple universities, we have to be competitive with what the other universities are paying the agents in order for the agents to recommend Midwestern to the students, in so much as the agent wants to maximize their own profits and will recommend the schools that pay them the highest commissions. We could not afford that as an institution out of our own budget, and so this is where we came up with the proposal and the model that the student, if they chose Midwestern, would understand that payment would go to the university and then would be given to the agent.
But I thought one of the main reasons you wanted us to do this was because otherwise we will not know what the agent is charging the student.
Well, that is,
He did this in large part because we wanted to remain competitive, but transparently so.
You know, you're absolutely right.
Right.
And so that is absolutely a reason as well, as we were very concerned in certain markets that students were being charged an exorbitant fee in that market by the agent before they would get here. And this allows us to streamline that for the student and make sure that they're paying one fee.
I come back, I just want to make sure, as a board, are we free from discriminatory practices by what we were doing here? It's a legal question.
Yeah,
I want it to be researched, and I want you to just tell me. Yeah, that's all. I just want to make sure we're not.
Absolutely, we'll research that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's all.
Yes, sir.
Would you later define for me via email or a phone conversation what you mean by discriminatory, so I have a better grasp of it? Because I'm looking at markets and I need to know what you're meaning. Because they're differentiated.
My concern is I perceive that we are charging different students different amounts based on their agent who comes in, and we're negotiating and we're getting fees. In the end, those students come to the United States as, I don't know what their status is as students. But can they then come back and say, because I'm a certain nationality, you charge me $800, but you only charge this person of another nationality $300? And are we in any way
Let me
culpable?
ask you, let me just say that the way I would understand it is our recruitment, the recruitment fee is different, but the tuition fee is not. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
We're not charging these students this for an education. We are passing through what they have to charge to get recruited. They are not paying a different tuition than
I just
any
want to
other
ensure we're
international
not
student.
discriminating, and you're telling me we're not.
Well, I want to check with Keith, but that's my understanding that we're
That's
not.
all I'm asking.
Yeah,
Are
what
we-
this
are we-
is a recruitment fee, not a fee for our services that we're offering.
No, that's absolutely correct. And my understanding from looking at this the first time is that we're not, but we'll double check that.
Would a third party view us as discriminatory? That's all I'm asking.
Good question.
We'll double check that, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, next one, Madam.
Okay, hearing none, have a motion to approve this recommendation as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, 18-33, corporate contracts for academic degree programs. The administration requests authorization to negotiate corporate contracts in order to attract additional groups of students via corporate clients. Dr. Lamb, please review this recommendation.
Thank you. What we're learning in our recruitment in Dallas-Fort Worth, in particular with large corporations such as large health services corporations with multiple hospitals, ISDs and the like, is that there is interest in the programs that we are offering, but there is additionally interest in negotiating a tuition and fee structure that works well for the institution, not only for Midwestern State, but also for example, the healthcare system or the ISD, so that they would be inclined to enter a contract with us to provide us with students for these programs. And so that is what we're recommending. We are recommending that we are as an institution given the flexibility to negotiate these contracts with the different corporate entities.
This is where they would pay the tuition to Midwestern.
Yes.
Versus the student.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Lamb? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve this recommendation?
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Keith. And Mr. Sheriff, that concludes the business of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. We'll move on to the Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee. Ms. Bush.
And last but not least, the Audit Compliance and Management Review Committee will now come to order. Members of the committee here today are Dr. Givens, Mr. Gregg, and Mr. Hesse.
The first item, 1834, is the approval of the minutes of the committee meeting held August 3rd, 2017. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved as presented. Item 1835, historically underutilized business report fiscal year 17. This report is shown in the board book as a point of information only, and Dr. Follet is available if there are questions. Do we have any questions or is there any discussion? The item is presented as a point of information only and no action is necessary. Thank you, Dr. Follet. Item 1836, compliance update. An update on compliance activity since the last board meeting was prepared by Mr. Stovall, and he's here to answer any questions if necessary. Are there any questions from Mr. Stovall regarding the report? Everybody's ready to go. So this item is presented as a point of information only and no action is necessary. Item 1837, fiscal year 17, internal audit report and audit update. Ms. Kidwell will present her annual report for approval and will answer questions related to her update. Ms. Kidwell.
Thank you. Good evening. I have presented, or in the board book is the fiscal year 2017 internal audit annual report. It is compliance with the Texas Internal Auditing Act. It relates the services that my office provided during the last fiscal year, and it also explains any deviations from the fiscal 2017 audit plan. I believe Chairman Gregg had a question last meeting about the reconciliation between what was provided versus what we thought we would. There were a few deviations, basically postponed from 17 to 18 due to either scheduling conflicts or reallocating of audit resources. But I do want to thank the board, the president, and definitely university management for their support in the performance of my responsibilities for this past year. I'll be happy to answer any questions and formally request that this be approved.
All right, could I have a motion to accept, to approve the fiscal year 17 internal audit annual report as presented?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This motion carries. Item 1838, internal audit quality assurance review self-assessment. In preparation for the peer review process, the Office of Internal Audits conducted a self-assessment. This document is presented for the board's acceptance. Lee, could you please discuss this review process and the assessment?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to submit the self-assessment report as part of the 2017 quality assurance peer review process. The principal objective of this process was for me to assess the Office of Internal Audit's conformance with the applicable standards that govern the internal audit process for the state of Texas. In my opinion, the Office of Internal Audit generally conforms to all of the standards. I did identify opportunities to enhance the processes during this performance assessment. Two areas I assessed as partially conforms will be the main focus in my upcoming year, the Quality Assurance and Improvement Program and the Monitoring Progress procedures. And I've also included 4 goals in the report that are listed on page 114. I'm very committed to continuous improvement and will continue to revisit these goals and continue to refine and enhance the Office of Internal Audit's practices. And I'm looking forward to the assistance of Gina Oglesby, the Chief Audit Executive from Stephen F. Austin State University, who was here in 2014 to perform the peer review, and Mr. Justin McInich, who is the Audit Manager for UT Tyler Health Northwest, for performing the external validation of the self-assessment that I prepared. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
How do you feel about your goals of certification? Is this too challenging?
Well, based
Okay.
on the heavy audit load this fall, I've postponed the test from January till March, but I just have one part left. And so I'm ready, honestly, to get started studying and get it over with.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Any other questions for Lee? Could I have a motion to accept the self-assessment as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 1839, policy manual changes. Modifications to 2 policies are presented for board's approval. First is policy 2.31, administration selection process. The current policy requires the board to evaluate the university president's performance at the February board meeting each year. It is recommended that the policy be changed as presented to require the evaluation to occur no later than the May meeting each year. This change will provide flexibility and will fit better with the academic and budget calendars. Are there any questions regarding this item? All right, we will now move to the next policy change, policy 3.314, ethics policy for employees of MSU. Mr. Maka, would you please present this item?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As the introduction, there talks about the modifications of this policy are required by Senate Bill 20, which was passed in 2015. This is really kind of the trifecta for us of Senate Bill 2015, Senate Bill 20. In May of last year, this board passed the compliance policy, which was a big step for the university. May of this year, the board passed the conflict of interest, conflict of commitment policy. Dr. Carlston referenced that earlier, and I too want to echo his remarks as far as the way that Dr. Shipley led this university in getting these policies vetted. And I certainly appreciate working with Dr. Carlston, the faculty, and the staff to help make these policies happen. And I also want to recognize Lee Kidwell, who's been invaluable in the compliance area. But those two were huge, and they've been huge for this university. This is the third part. This will hopefully put to bed Senate Bill 20 for us. But these changes that are highlighted, for the most part, are required by Senate Bill 20. A lot of them regurgitate the conflict of commitment, conflict of interest policy that was previously passed, but we were required to also reference this in our ethics policy. And there are some miscellaneous additions, revisions, and I tried to, where appropriate, bracket so you can see why are we changing this? What's the basis for this? The statutory reference, so that you can see, well, this is why, this is where this is coming from. But these changes, for the most part, are mandated by Senate Bill 20 and other provisions that the legislature has passed. And I really won't go into all of them, but I'll certainly answer any questions you may have.
Under Part B, Barry, 2 and 3 are really strong statements about what, is that going to be that we're saying professors cannot accept compensation for other things? I thought that was a fairly standard practice that they did outside consulting or other things. I'm on page 117,
Yes.
top of, and bottom of page 116.
Yeah. Well, this again, I referenced in Texas Government Code, Section 572.051. And so this is not my language. This is where this is coming from.
I thought it was that they required full disclosure.
Yeah, they can accept it, they just have to disclose it.
Well, number 3 says they cannot accept other employment or compensation that could reasonably be expected to impair the employee's independence of judgment in the performance of the employee's official duties.
Right.
Correct.
So that's a conflict of interest.
So if they disclosed it to the president has the opportunity to evaluate it, she believes there's a conflict, and they wouldn't be able to accept it.
So we are expecting every professor to disclose any outside funding that they get? Okay, that's what he says?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole new world. That's, we went through all that last year with the conflict of interest.
The faculty senate is aware of this,
Yeah.
and then, okay,
Oh, it's been heavily vetted.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yes.
All right, any other questions or further discussion? Could I have a motion to approve these two policy changes as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Then we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. That concludes the business to come before this committee, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Burks, you are efficient as always. The committee of the whole will now reconvene. The board of regents will go into executive session to discuss items 18-02A, consultation with attorney 18-02B, real property 18-02D, personnel matters and 18-02E, deliberations regarding security audits as allowed by Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 072, 074, and 076. For the record, the date is November 9th, 2017, and the time is
5:11.
5:11. Dr. Shipley, Mr. Maka, Ms. Farrow, Ms. Kidwell may remain for the first part of this discussion. Please stop.
That's funny.
Get y'all ready for that,
All right, closed session is complete. The only items discussed were items announced. No votes were taken. The committee of the whole will resume an open session. Is there any further action to come before the board? If not, that concludes our meeting today. Thank you for your participation. I look forward to seeing you guys at dinner. Our meeting will resume tomorrow, 9 a.m. We are adjourned.